discovering what it's like to live in the light of death, it just blew me away.
We will all die, but how we die, what happens before we die, is under our control.
Fentanyl, 400 micrograms.
We'll do it to the best we can for as long as we can.
I'm not afraid of dying. I don't want to die anytime soon, but I'm not afraid of it.
Have you had enough breakfast? How we come to the end of life now is different. It takes different answers, new solutions.
He wants his life to end
Peacefully.
on his own terms.
You are doing a wonderful job. You're a wonderful sister.
Just to family and friends and love.
Is it possible to achieve death on our own terms?
I've seen many people do it.
I'm Bill Moyers. Dying well, to many of us, means a measure of control over how and where we die. That basic fact has been lost in the bitter debate over the right to die. Under the media's glare, Dr. Jack Kevorkian framed the debate in the most simplistic terms. Are you for or against physician-assisted suicide? But talk to dying people themselves and to their families and caregivers, and you learn that no one wants to die a minute too soon. How we take charge of those final days, however, depends on our personality, values, and beliefs, on the stage of our illness, on whether our pain is under control, how we bear the indignities, and whether the people around us understand what's happening and know our wishes. Having choices is part of good care. It's not just a simple matter of voting death up or down. So in this third program of our series, Dr. Kevorkian is not heard from. We hear instead from patients, loved ones, and doctors who talk about suffering and the death of one's own.
Was this sort of your retirement paradise?
We had worked towards that and had everything in place for retirement.
Jim Witcher is a Texan who moved to northern Louisiana to do the work he loves. Veterinarian, horse breeder, and meat and poultry inspector.
We had built this farm here where we also had horses and thoroughbreds, and so I had two jobs. Susie had two jobs of taking care of the house and then running the farm when I was gone. How you doing, Eddie?
I'm doing pretty good, Doc.
What do you think about the baby?
That's a big baby. Good bone, big baby.
Okay, sweetie. Let's follow Mama.
Come on.
There's Mama.
Was it a good life?
Wonderful life.
This is where Witcher expected to die one day. He just didn't expect it to be this soon. In 1997, at the age when Jim and his wife Susie were dreaming of retirement, he was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease.
It was just like a death sentence. That's the way it hit me.
ALS attacks the nervous system, leading to gradual death by paralysis. The mind remains alert, even as the body shuts down. With rapidly progressive ALS, doctors said Jim would live 2 to 5 years. When we met him, he was coming up on 2.5 years.
When somebody dies, there's a finality to it, and you probably get angry, and then you get depressed, and then you accept it, and then you go on. With this, as each stage has hit him, it's like another death, and you die each stage. And each stage you have to go through this being angry and depressed, and then you get on with it. And It's just an ongoing thing, and it's something we have to accept, I guess, till however the disease takes his life. Every day I have to do more and more for him that he can't do anymore. Okay, ready?
It started in my legs, so it's progressed up my body, and I'm fast losing control of my arms. Help me get my hand up there where I can get started on this thing. It has affected my voice. It will affect my swallowing, and it appears, in my case, the breathing will go last. Now, all that I can do is operate this wheelchair.
Since Jim Witcher was first diagnosed with ALS, he has sought the latest treatments, going to specialists at Johns Hopkins University Hospital in Baltimore and trying out experimental drugs.
So he's fought this. We've fought it.
I've tried everything that anybody suggested that I thought, had any merit.
This is a man who was a collegiate wrestler. He was very athletic. Always held down 2 full-time jobs. We've had a vet practice. We've had 2 farms.
Why in the mornings it's so hard to get my muscles going?
Well, they've been stiff all night long.
I have been able to feed myself. It's not very pretty, but I'm still trying to do that, but I'm fast losing that.
I'll call and ask. But,
You lose gradual control of everything up past your throat. Breathing, eventually, unless you take a respirator that breathes for you, you gradually can't breathe. Of course, by that time you're swallowing. If you tried to swallow, you would inhale food or water into your windpipe because the muscles in your throat are gone. So you have to quit that.
New Rompton.
So as it progresses, the next thing that's likely to happen is you will lose your voice?
I am losing my voice at this time. Back it up so I can bend my chin down.
And then what happens? You lose your ability to swallow?
To swallow. That's probably what's going to happen next.
Okay, I'm going to put you just a little bit. All right. Can you reach it? Here, I'll pull it this way. Okay? You just have to take it day by day. Every day is a new day, and before I get out of bed in the morning, I'm asking the Lord for strength physically to be able to care for him.
Okay. Ready?
Okay.
For compassion that I need, because I can fly off the handle pretty quick and get frustrated real easy, and this is all a new road for me to travel to, and I know I need to do something, but I don't know what or how.
I feel good.
I'm glad you still got the big strength in your neck. I don't know what we're going to do when you don't.
At first, you look back maybe 6 months to realize, well, I could do that 6 months ago, now I can't.
I think while I got your head stuck, I'm off ahead and get you shaved.
Then it's 3 months. Then it's a month that you can look back and know that you've lost something. And now it's daily.
When I go to the grocery store, I'm worried about, is he all right while I'm gone? You know, what if he falls out of the wheelchair? What if, you know, he needs a urinal? What if? And we're out here in the country, and I have nobody anywhere close that could come immediately and help him.
Now, there are ALS people that choose to go on a respirator for it to breathe with them, and a stomach feeding tube when they can't swallow. And those people can live possibly 10 more years with that type of help. I have chosen just not to go that route. Once I get paralyzed and can't move my limbs, and I'm not going to take a stomach feeding tube or a respirator, then I really wish that I could probably go on and figure out how to die at that time.
What are your options?
Well, I'm not suicidal prone, and I wanted to live as long as I could, but I would like to have it legal to have physician-assisted hastened death, to where I would either take an injection or if I could swallow it all at that time, just go ahead and take some kind of deal that would put me to sleep. And I would like to have my family there and my friends.
If you could do what's best for you, what would you do?
Maybe a month ago, I could have committed suicide with some drugs that the veterinarians probably have. I probably have lost that ability. You don't realize how much you're going to lose, you know, in a month. I probably lost that ability. Can I have some water, please?
So if you could, you'd have some doctor come and quietly give you enough morphine to help you die.
Once I get to that stage, yeah, that was what I'd want.
Well, what stage is it where you say to yourself, no more?
When I'm totally paralyzed up to the neck, can't swallow, and you know, at that stage.
What can you do? What could you do?
I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
What would be a good death?
A painless death where you just go to sleep.
And you've done that as a veterinarian for your animals, haven't you?
Many times.
He made the choice that if there was any way that I guess he could have assisted suicide, that's the way he would prefer to go. And he went to a lawyer and he drew up legal papers not to go on the respirator, not to go on the feeding tube. So that's out of my hands, out of the family's hands. But I could not myself give him a lethal dose of anything.
The Witchers have 2 grown children. Their son Jay lives nearby with his wife Pam and 3 kids.
Come on.
They're struggling to accept their father's desire to hasten his death.
It's getting to a point where he's just going to be able to lay in bed, and that's basically it. And you can't expect anybody in that situation to have to choose between, you know, taking a non-painful way out or having to suffer by refusing life support.
You might take a flying leap. Hey, what do you say for Opa? That's the mic.
I would want him to have another choice, but my belief system does not allow me to believe that the other choice is right.
Opa, yes, Opa.
That's Opa.
In our community, it's not an issue that I think has been discussed, physician-assisted suicide. It's just not something that's considered or discussed here.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me help you down.
All right.
Okay.
With my dad, I understand and I know what's going on, but I'm not in his shoes, so I'm not dealing with those emotions that he's having to deal with. I'm dealing with my emotions that this is my dad, he's fixing to die, and you know, I want him to be happy and satisfied with whatever he's doing. But as far as talking in the community, nobody talks about it.
Say Opa.
Hey.
Hey.
Although Jay and his family are close by, Susie has been reluctant to ask them for help in caring for Jim.
Pam, Jay's wife, teaches school. She's got a 1-year-old
and a little boy that's fixing to be 8 years old, and a 15-year-old daughter, and that totally keeps her busy. In fact, I don't know how she handles it. And Jay, of course, we said he had yes. Jay has 2 full-time jobs, and what we hate to do is take away from whatever little family time that they can manage to get together. And maybe this summer when Pam's not teaching school, there'll be a little more time available, but right now it's just really an imposition to them.
When I reach the point where I can't swallow, or even where I can't move my arms and do anything, do my computer or anything like that, or come out and look at my horses. Come here. What I'd really like is just figure out how to go and get it over with, because this is a terrible ordeal for me. It's been going on for the 2.5 years, and it's an even more terrible ordeal for my family. And I just need it. I just need to go ahead and finish it.
I think the first thing that runs through your mind are all the things that you wish you could do that you hadn't done. Hopefully you're in a place in life where you don't have a lot of issues to resolve with people. And fortunately I wasn't in that place. I felt I was in a very good place in terms of my family. I think the hardest thing for me was to tell people that the time was short, and for them trying to deal with it because they went into a lot of denial. And, you know, in some cases still are. That's been the hardest thing.
They just can't face the world without you.
Well, that'd be nice to think, but it's just, you know, seeing me die means they face their mortality too.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much.
You're entirely welcome. Have a nice day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Kitty Rail is 56 years old and lives alone. Until recently, she worked as a purchasing agent with an alarm company. 18 months ago, she had a hysterectomy to remove cancer. At first, the prognosis was good. Then,
about 9 months later, after the original hysterectomy did, I began to have back pain, and sure enough, I had uterine cancer, which when it spreads is, when my doctor described it, he said it's not a good one. It's not one that has a history of being able to be cured, and the time is not very good. It's usually very short. It could be a matter of months up to the longest he'd heard it was like 5 years, I believe. So I was hoping for the 5 years, and it's come much quicker than I had hoped.
You're not going to have those 5 years.
No, I'm not. In fact, I'm looking at months at this point.
Kitty tried 3 rounds of chemotherapy to slow the cancer. The last one just 2 months ago.
That was when I started having a lot of discomfort.
The treatments aren't working, and the cancer is spreading. Kitty's chosen to be at home with hospice care, comfort care.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good.
Good.
Fritza, Kitty's hospice nurse, comes several times a week.
Well, that's
She's
okay.
especially concerned with taking care of Kitty's pain.
So how are you really feeling?
Other than just weak, I feel fine.
Okay. The pain is less?
Yes, it seems good today.
And how about yesterday?
Yesterday was not a very good day. It really bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
But Kitty wants more than pain control at the end of life. Like Jim Witcher, she wants to control the time and circumstance of her dying. She can do so under Oregon's Death with Dignity Act, which allows her physician to help her die when she's ready.
As you know, Oregon has a law that allows us to decide that we can deal with this if we want, and that we can get medication that helps us to die. What I'm watching for is just when I just can't, it's difficult because I don't know. I don't know what the point will be when I say it's time to do this, but I don't want to become a vegetable. I don't want to become so that I have to just lay and somebody has to come and spoon feed me, and I don't know.
You don't want to be helpless, do you?
I don't want to be out of control. I think that's it. You don't want to be out of control. I've always been one who wants control over things, and I want control over my decision to do that, and I just can't think of anything worse than being helpless and you know, there's being nothing you can do.
Okay. Boy, it's up a little bit today.
Is it? Well,
It's nice. Have you been moving around?
yeah, a little bit.
Okay. It's not because you're hurting.
No.
No.
I'm very
All right.
What are the considerations you're weighing for when to choose?
I don't really know. You take it a day at a time. So far, I've been able to stay at home.
And I'll listen to your heart.
I'm getting very weak. It's even getting hard for me to get in and out of bed. So when you're getting to that place, you're starting to go, you know, uh-oh. What, you know, how am I going to handle this? What am I going to do? I don't know at this point what will press those decisions of what the next choice will be.
Of course, there's a gamble, isn't it, that you might reach that point where you can't do what you've planned all this time to do.
It's happened, yeah. And I guess you just deal with it, you know, but I would hope that I know the point.
But you clearly haven't decided to go somewhere else. You want to stay home.
I would prefer that, yes.
You'd like to die at home.
Yes.
I understand that. At this moment, it's up to you. You could actually ask your doctor for the medication.
Yes.
And she would give it to you.
Yes, I could do it tonight.
Safely under the law. She's protected.
Yes.
You're protected.
Yes.
And you're just, every morning when you wake up, do you wonder if this might be the day?
So far, not yet, although it's starting to enter my mind more in the last week or so as I've seen my strength go and it get harder and harder for me to manage. I know that the time is coming, but you know, this is a good day. I'm feeling fine. I've got a good book to read. My daughter's coming over later today, so, you know, things are okay. So we look at this one. Mm-hmm.
As her illness progressed, Kitty and her youngest daughter, Jan, began to organize the family photos, a way of passing on family history.
I know, I remember that tree.
Yeah, that's Mesa, Arizona, and your tree.
Both Kitty's daughters support her wish to be in charge of her dying.
She talked to us about, I guess, just her thoughts about it and that she was looking into it.
What do you think?
Well, I wasn't shocked. You know, I think that anybody in this position would probably contemplate that. It wasn't a big surprise.
Have you all been talking about about what happens now, about how you're going to manage it?
We're just, at this point, we're pretty much taking it a day at a time and how I'm feeling and dealing with, you know, living issues here. I don't think, you know, at this point
We've talked somewhat about care options, and, you know, if we get to a point where we might need to hire a nurse full-time or that kind of stuff, but I don't think we've talked about when you would maybe make that decision. I think she has gotten a little bit better about letting us know what we can do for her.
So caring is just really being here for her.
Yeah.
When she needs you.
Yeah. And I think it's important to be able to bring Isabel over here as much as possible, and
yeah. Bah.
That's the hardest thing, my granddaughter and my daughters. You know, they're young and just getting on with their life, and they're wonderful. And I just, you know, I'm sorry I won't be there to go through life with them. I think you should have control over your life, and dying is one of those things that's a part of your life.
And it's not as if you want to leave prematurely. I mean, you're trying to take every day.
Oh, I'm wringing every day out. Yes, yes, I want every day that I can get. You know, it's when you reach that point where it's no longer bearable, and I don't know what that will be, then I want to be able to make that decision.
Jim Witcher's body continues to wither. As his physical condition deteriorates, the financial burdens mount.
I guess about half of my estate that I'd built up probably is gone now. We had 240 acres, and we've sold off about half of it.
This wheelchair probably sells for about $24,000. The van, if we bought that equipped the way it is new, would probably be about $45,000. We had to do some remodeling on our house for me to roll him into a shower and bathe him. You're looking at another $12,000 to $15,000. It's astronomical.
Jim's illness would have wiped them out financially if they didn't have good health insurance. It covers 80% of their medical bills and weekly visits by a physical therapist. But it doesn't provide for someone to do for Jim what Susie does. And nothing compensates for the emotional impact on both of them.
He's had to accept so much and give up so much. He has sworn that when I have to feed him, he don't want to live any longer, you know?
Do you get depressed?
Yes, sir. I don't see how you could not. And I think that's just part of it.
What do you do for it?
Try not to cry when he can see me. Pray.
For Susie, the sacrifices of caring for Jim on her own are many. Most of all, she misses going to church.
I cried Sunday morning because I was looking forward to going. I knew I wasn't going to be able to. I hadn't been able to go the last Sunday, and I wasn't going to get to go the next two. And I was a Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. The church doors were open. I was there.
Do you have help, Susie?
Not at this point. The more I have to do for him, of course, I do the yard and the house and the farm and the shopping, and it's getting to where I have less and less time during the day to do the normal everyday things that people have to do in the course of living.
Who's taking care of the caretaker?
That's something that we haven't done, and we've got to make some big decisions.
He's tried to get me to do things, you know, but if I were in his shoes, to have a strange person or somebody come in and hold my urinal or wipe my bottom or things that you have to do for him, you know, I don't want him to be embarrassed that way any sooner than he has to.
You know, the caretaker really has it probably tougher than I do, you know, because of the emotional thing attached to it, and then just the tremendous workload that it puts on them, and you put off having people come in, I guess, longer than you should, and we've done that, and it's a mistake, but.
8 months ago, Jim almost died when a blood clot reached his lungs. He agreed then to let his doctor do a surgical procedure to prevent future clots. It has prolonged his life.
Hey, Jim.
Hi, Dr. Johnson.
How are you doing this morning? Good.
But today he has come to see Dr. Pierre Blanchard with a different agenda.
I need to know what my options are. I guess what I'm concerned about is when I get to where I can't basically do anything but breathe and barely swallow and have to be just somebody take care of everything I do. I'm concerned about where I go from there, and what you can do for me, if anything.
I mean, anything we can do as far as comfort care is concerned, I think we can do that. And I think we can talk about hospice at some point.
I don't want to go to hospice.
I mean, do you obviously know exactly what hospice entails?
I don't.
Well, I think I do, but
it's pretty good. I mean, they will keep you out of distress.
They'll even send you home with a morphine drip. And, you know, if I can get to it and to where I push the button enough and everybody else is out of the room, well then, you know, so what? It makes no sense to me that you can do things like that, get away with it, and why we don't just change the damn law and get things different.
Well, I guess there's such a moral, religious issue here in the South, especially about suicide, too, that's probably impeded some of the progress in those areas.
What would you do if you were in my position? What would you want done?
Well, I want to be kept comfortable, that's for sure. I don't know if I could say what I would do. I can only tell you what I can do as your doctor, but I can't always say what I would do as a person. I guess you have to be put in that circumstance. It's not real easy to say, you know, I would do this or I would do that. I have a great deal of empathy for the things that are occurring, that's for sure.
Well, if the law were changed in Louisiana to be like the Oregon law, would you have any objection to that?
I don't know if I could kill somebody.
The only thing that I think is unfair is I'm going to have to do it before I would really rather do it. And that's not fair. I'm going to have to do it while I can still swallow and while I can still hold a straw and something like that. And there's no law against somebody putting something out in front of you and then me doing it. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Because that's me committing suicide.
Yes.
And it's just, I will have to do it before I really want to.
Well, I think there are definitions of discomfort, and I still think that, you know, my experience with hospice has been that we can do things for people that don't keep things moving along for long periods of time. You just have you have to trust me for that because I've seen it.
So the law will help me die slowly.
Well, not in 5 seconds, but you know, certainly not. I don't think dragging it out.
Okay, Lord, I understand the position you're in, and I know that. I just don't. I think it stinks. Just to be real honest with you, it's not a mature way to look at certain end of death or end of life situations such as mine. It's not a mature way to look at it.
But as your physician, it would be hard for me just to absolutely take you away, and it'd be my responsibility to shoulder that burden. I can assist you in making things comfortable. I can't really assist you in killing yourself. I think we should be all right.
All right.
Are you having any respiratory problems, breathing problems?
None that except the fact I can't sneeze and cough like I used to.
What strikes me is that Jim Witcher is my age. And when I look at him, I see a reflection of myself, and I ask, what would I do?
Well, yeah, he asked me that too, and I said, well, I don't know. You never know until you're put in that circumstance. And that's not evading the issue. It's easy to agree with somebody if you want to, but I really don't know what I would do. I like life, but I don't know if I'd like that kind of life. I don't see much fasciculation, really.
What could you do for Jim?
I think that we can help give him support. We can help his wife by getting him help to help deal with him as far as his activities of daily living. I think if things progress to the point that he is in any distress, that we can give him medicine that will make him not be in respiratory distress. Can you squeeze? A little bit there.
But he then loses control over that decision, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
And he seems to me to be struggling for control. He wants to control his
He
goal.
wants that, and he wants more than that. He wants more than what we're describing. I think what you say is true. He wants not for me to control the circumstance. He wants himself to be in control and to dictate how things go when that time arrives.
Is that an ethical problem for you?
It is.
Well, you took an oath to save people, not to kill them.
That's very true. I guess included in that oath, too, is to make sure that people have comfort and dignity in the way that their illnesses are dealt with, too. So there's a little bit of a play there between those two.
If you were free to help Jim, if the law were not in your way, what would you give him? Morphine?
Yeah, I think the most direct way is potassium chloride. It's not painful, it stops the heart, and it's quick.
But the law says
that would be a real no-no.
That would be...
Because I know that we give people in terminal circumstances morphine drips, and whatever they die from, we attribute it directly to their illness, but I guess the reality is that morphine probably contributes to it when you have to get to a high enough dose to suppress the breathing process.
I think if I were the doctor, I could give him the medication, but I couldn't help him take it.
I could do that. I could do that.
You could give him the medication.
I mean, I could say, just, this is for comfort or whatever, and he can do with it whatever he wanted to do.
Dr. Nancy Crumpacker has been a cancer physician for more than 20 years.
I've seen 50 to 100 patients die a year, my own patients. So I saw quite a bit of the end stages and watched some of those patients go through what they considered suffering, and maybe that was not what they wanted.
Kitty Rail has turned to Dr. Crumpacker for help in dying. Under the Oregon law, she can assist Kitty with advice and medication.
I'm getting weaker.
Oregon's Death with Dignity law requires patients to have a 6-month terminal diagnosis before a physician can help them die. 2 doctors must confirm the diagnosis.
This back pain, sometimes it's so bad that I really have trouble getting from...
And the patient must be mentally capable to make the decision.
It hurts.
Do you find that most of your patients are more afraid of pain than of dying itself?
Yes. The conversations don't rotate around the actual death itself.
But the getting there.
But the getting there is how we're going to get there.
When I'm looking at myself and going, I can't do this anymore, I can't manage anymore, I can't get from one place to the other any longer. And it's coming.
Kitty first met with Dr. Crumpacker several months ago. Together, they've completed all the paperwork necessary to apply for the medication that will hasten Kitty's death.
It's a matter of you getting on the phone and calling me, letting me know what your thoughts are. If you...
and I need to talk to my daughters and find out whether they want to be here.
Right.
So I need to take those steps.
I can't participate unless I feel that she has thought about this, not just today, not just yesterday, but that is something she's given a lot of thought to, maybe over the years, and at least since she's had the cancer diagnosis.
You know, it's difficult for me to know at this point what the actual moment's going to be.
How can you predict, yeah?
You know, and I guess I need to have in my mind that it's going to be a time that's available for you. Or, I mean, I'm a little...
Why don't you, when you've made up your mind that that's what you want to do and sort of have a time frame in mind, give me a call and we'll...
Work it out.
We will work it out.
Okay.
Yeah. And obviously, if you call me and then you've got something set up and you decide at the last minute you're not going to do it, you know, you need...
Sure, I understand
You are fully in
control. I understand
control.
that.
You
When she chooses to end her life, if she does, how will she do it?
She will take a prescription of a barbiturate, and it's about 2 tablespoons of a bitter powder. So my job is to try to make it not so bitter. And we just mix it in water and add a bunch of sugary syrup, something to kind of hide the bitterness. And you can swallow it in less than a minute. People do that and swallow it in less than 30 seconds. And that takes effect and people go to sleep usually within about 5 minutes. And then they're in a coma, then they die.
And the signs are that it's peaceful?
It's very peaceful.
And you will write that prescription when she calls?
Yes.
Will you be there when she dies?
You bet.
You'll mix the medication for her?
Mm-hmm.
Is that consistent with caring for the dying when you're actually helping them to die?
If that's her sense or anyone else's sense of suffering, that's what I want to do, is relieve that suffering. I am hastening an inevitable death of a terminal person who's competent, an adult, an Oregon resident.
Which means it's legal.
And it's legal.
Dr. Crumpacker was not the original cancer specialist to oversee Kitty's treatment. Dr. Kevin Olson was.
Hey, Kevin.
They're colleagues in the same office.
What's going on with Kitty?
But when Kitty looked for a physician to help her die, she didn't go to Dr. Olson. She knew he was opposed.
I don't feel like I can actively participate in an assisted suicide situation. I can't write the prescription. I'm happy to talk to patients about what their issues are around that, and but I just didn't feel like I could or should be the one that actually does this.
Help me to understand why that's so.
Well, I think I haven't been trained in that fashion. I don't feel like I'm competent, but I think more importantly, my own moral framework is such that I don't think that I could do it and feel good about doing it and feel that I was actually helping the situation. I mean, it might be somewhat on my part, but because certainly I've given extra morphine to a patient who is in pain, knowing that maybe that extra amount of morphine might be something that would hasten their death. But something visceral inside of me just tells me that this is probably not a direction I should go personally, and so I haven't.
Is that a matter of religious conviction to you?
Well, certainly I'm, spent 14 years in Catholic school, so I'm well versed in the religious issues, but I don't know that it's because a priest or somebody tells me I need to do this. It just doesn't feel right to me. And
is it your oath? You took an oath to save life, not in life?
I don't know. I don't know how to... The oath really isn't the issue. It's just a matter of, at the end of the day, when things are done and what I feel good about what I've done. And I just didn't think I could feel good about doing that myself.
No, Neurontin. Yeah.
Dr. Olson does oversee Kitty's hospice care, including her pain medication.
One of the issues that comes up a lot when you talk about helping patients die is that patients will worry that when the going gets really tough, maybe the doctors or the family members won't have enough guts to do the right thing and give them the medicine that they need.
Dilaudid.
For fear of making things go wrong.
And here we have the amitriptyline.
The Oregon law is controversial. but all sides agree it has led to the use of more pain medication for the dying. Oregon has the highest per capita use of morphine for pain control in the country.
I always tell patients that if I'm ever going to err, I'm going to err on the side of giving you too much rather than too little, because that fear of a painful death, of being in pain and not being able to do anything about it, is really an overriding issue with a lot of dying patients.
Have you used any of the Dilaudid since I was
I
here?
took some this morning.
Okay, how about yesterday, when you were having so much?
They think that I would be able to get some of the pain to go away if I took more of certain ones of these, but they also just knock you out.
You use 4 of them each time, then?
I was using 3.
Okay. Remember, I kind of suggested that you may take 4.
Okay. I want to be able to read and be aware, and I don't want to sit and sleep all day long or, just doze off. I don't want to knock myself out. So we're trying to find something that will give me the quality of life I want and won't just totally knock me out, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Otherwise, you have that nagging, lingering feeling of pain all the time.
There have been occasionally times a patient in the hospital, the nurses will say that, he's clearly restless, he's delirious, we're not sure if giving him more morphine might make things worse, he might stop breathing. I've not worried about that. I've said, listen, we need to make that patient comfortable. Sometimes the only thing keeping them going is that painful stimulus, and you relieve the pain and they die shortly thereafter. But I feel in my heart that it wasn't me that took that patient's life. It was their disease process, and all I did is help them be comfortable in the last moments.
Is it a matter of control? You want to remain in control as the doctor?
Actually, I'm happy to give the patient their own pain medicines and let them choose how to use it. But it's not so much that. It's that if my mission is to make them die, that's a little different than to make them comfortable. And that's maybe where Nancy and I differ a little bit. Nancy doesn't see a distinction between that. And
what about that,
Nancy?
I don't see a distinction. I see the hastening death with a prescription by a patient at his or her home as actually a much better situation, because then it really is hopefully all in the patient's control. In Kitty's case, I'll go out there and if we've arranged a time, I'll say, Kitty, are you sure now's the time? I'm going to give her plenty of chance to doubt and to change her mind. There's probably a dozen patients I've had conversations with who have gone through all the steps, who we've never gotten to the point of writing a prescription. They wanted to know that they could have that if the time came that they really wanted it.
The last time I talked to her, she said she wasn't sure she would follow through, but she liked the notion that she has the option if she wants.
I called hospice.
The key thing, I think, if patients are going to go this route, is that they need to have a doctor who will take the time to really work through all the issues and to really make sure that all the other avenues have been explored before they go into this realm. And Nancy's exceptional in that regard.
Thanks for coming over.
Okay. It's really good to see you.
Thanks.
I cannot imagine taking that last act in which I'm taking something that I know is going to be the last thing I do.
I know. It'll be hard. It'll be hard. And obviously you put it off to, I'm not sure what's going to press that button and say it's time. I can't tell you that. It'll just come and we'll do it.
Jim Witcher wants to control the time of his death, but can't because of the law and his family's religious beliefs. Kitty Rail has control, but doesn't know when she'll use it.
Dr. Carlos Gomez.
More often than not, it's the doctor and loved ones who must decide for the dying. It's never easy. Some hard choices now confront Dr. Carlos Gomez at the University Hospital in Charlottesville, Virginia. One of his patients is terminally ill, and the standard amounts of medication are not easing his suffering.
Ricky, are you hurting this morning? A little. Do you remember who I am?
Ricky Tackett is dying of liver failure. He's only 44 years old.
You know, yesterday he acted so calm and not at all what I was seeing at home, but it come out last night. That's what I had been dealing with.
Delirium from the agitation.
I mean, just, you could not get him.
Ricky's wife, Rose, has been caring for him at home with some help from visiting hospice nurses. But he's become too agitated for her to handle.
We went back up on the Dilaudid overnight, and I went back up on it again this morning. I called Karen at 7. She's back up to 34.
Right. He got real combative just a minute ago.
Ricky, can you wake up enough to talk to me for a second? Are you hurting in your belly right now?
Dr. Gomez is trying to determine the exact amount of pain medication to keep Ricky comfortable.
Does that hurt?
But he has another consideration. He's also trying to keep Ricky conscious enough to communicate with his wife.
He's gotten 2 good doses of his Dilaudid, too.
It's not working.
We've got a decision to make in terms of his level of consciousness. Part of the delirium is the medicines that we're giving him, I'm afraid. I think when we back down, he starts to get agitated. I don't want him to have that kind of agitation.
Wait a minute, Ricky. Okay, it's all right.
And
It's all right. Let me hold your hand.
it seems to work for a little while, so I'm just going to double the medicine right now. So he got Ativan just when?
Just now. I just gave it to him.
Just 1 milligram?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and give 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Ricky, I'm going to come back a little bit later on and talk with you, okay?
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
You said in there, we have a decision to make. What's the decision?
The decision is there's a fine line between trying to keep him awake enough to be conversant and controlling his pain. And we usually are very good about that, but he's encephalopathic at this point. He's literally out of his mind. He's delirious. And part of his agitation and part of his suffering is the delirium. Not just for him, but for his wife. And so, you know, we tried to back down on his pain medicine yesterday, thinking that he was too somnolent. He woke up a bit. I was actually able to talk to him. He recognized me. I got a call during the night that he was in pain. We started backing up on his, going up on his medicine again. And then this morning I called again, and he was still in pain, so we went up on his medicine again. We come in there now, and I can't elicit pain. I mean, I palpated over the site, and he's not tender there, but he's clearly delirious, and he doesn't recognize me this morning. So what do you do at that point?
Wouldn't the humane thing to do to be really relieve the pain, just let him sink into unconsciousness?
Yes. Yes.
Can you make that decision, or does his wife have to make it?
I think we make it in common.
Is this worse than you thought it would be? I just step back and let them do it, and it's hard.
You know, you can be a part of it any way you want. You know, there's days you could be more involved, and then other days you can step away, and we would understand.
I also want her to be engaged in the decisions, and I think we're reaching the point where the best that I can do for him is to sedate him and let him die. I would prefer that he be alert and talking all the way up to infinity, but I can't do that.
What's the difference between this decision to sedate him and let him die and what out there is called physician-assisted suicide?
And that's a great question. There are several differences. One is in intent. I don't want this fellow to die, and I'm not trying to will his death, and I'm not actively trying to bring it about. But I'm also not willing to let him sit there and suffer. And is there a hypocrisy here? There may or may not be. I'm creating a myth that makes me feel better about what I'm doing. That may be true, but there's a line that I'm very firm about, and Rose knows it, his wife knows it, and Ricky knows it, which is that I'm not going to do something to bring about his death as a result of my actions, direct as a result of my actions.
Did we change? We must have changed the Dilaudid orders last.
Am I willing to do things that may hasten his death? Sure. I'm not willing to give him fluids at this point. I'm not willing to put a feeding tube in him, for example. I'm not willing to treat an infection at this point. Are all those exercises in assisted suicide? I don't think so. I mean, that's a language that I'm not comfortable with. I think one of the first principles of medicine is you do no harm. And if you can't act so as to make the patient's life better, you step back and do something different. There's nothing medically that I think I can do at this point to make his life better, but I damn well can't control his pain and his delirium.
You can make his dying better.
I can make his dying better, absolutely. Not just for him, but for the family.
I just wanted to talk about what's going on with Ricky right now.
Before Dr. Gomez decides exactly what to do, he will try to understand clearly Rose's wishes and those of her dying husband.
The thing that I think is painful for all of us to watch is when he gets out of his head like that, is delirium. You kept saying he's not Ricky, and you're right, he's not Ricky. The only way that I know how to control that right now is to sedate him. Because when we've tried to lighten up on his medicine, he gets completely out of control. What it's going to mean, though, is that Ricky's probably going to be unconscious until he dies, or at least in and out of consciousness. He may respond by squeezing a hand. He may intermittently look at you, but he's not going to be thrashing about the way he has been.
When he's violent, and he's not Ricky. And he can't control that for whatever reasons. And he's not been himself in a while. Occasionally, a few words, but then he's back to not being himself. And he wouldn't want to be that way. We discussed this when he was very clear-headed. He wouldn't want this.
When he went back to Kentucky this last time, he'd been pretty clear with me that he wanted to have some time at home, walk through his church, say goodbye to his congregation, and so on. Was he able to do that?
We had about 4 beautiful days at home. He went to church. We stayed through the meeting. He didn't participate, but he was there. Whatever made him feel he had to do that, he got to do it. And sedation is welcomed, I think. He would want that.
Yeah, I agree. It's always a tough call, because the hope is always that you're going to be able to have some more quality time with somebody, and there comes a point where it sounds like whatever he felt like he needed to do, he did, and it sounds like whatever you needed to do with Ricky, you've done also.
Did you talk to him about dying? Did you two discuss it together, openly,
yes.
honestly?
Yes. I think the 2 weeks we were here before, he had the opportunity to have a very good conversation with all of his family, people in the church, of what he wanted. And I think they had that opportunity, and I hope that they would be satisfied with that time they got, while he was of clear mind. And he poured his heart out to everyone, including Dr. Gomez. He suffered enough, and he's tired, and he wants to go home.
He's prepared.
Yes, but his body won't let him, or something won't let him, you know? I don't know.
He was a minister.
Mm-hmm.
He is a minister.
Yes.
So faith is clearly...
He has a better place to go in our beliefs, and that's why...
Does that make it easier?
Yeah. That is the only thing that makes it better for me. And, you know, he's tired. He has a right to say, I don't want no more. And I think we should grant him that. You know, he's tried for us, and I think we should give it up for him.
Every day, more of Jim Witcher's nerve cells shut down. His spinal cord degenerates. His muscles waste away.
Are you any closer to a decision since I was here a month ago?
Of course, you know, you can talk big, but doing it's a different thing. But my intentions are at the point to where I begin to really have trouble swallowing. And before I lose the ability to sit in a wheelchair like this, I intend to go ahead and take some drugs.
Do you have those drugs?
Yes, I have the drugs. I'm a veterinarian and have a narcotics license. You can always make a mistake, I guess, but I think I have exactly what I need.
But if you wait, is there a danger that you might miss the moment, that you won't be able to swallow it?
Sure. I know I can do it now. I want to live a little while longer, so I'm gonna push the envelope as far as I can.
If you missed the moment and you were unable to do it, would you want Susie to help you?
No, because she couldn't do it, and she would feel guilty forever after. She would feel like a murderer.
Could I put the poison to his lips? Not now.
Hey, come here, Garrett.
On a prop
Get on this deal. Hey, boy.
Oh, boy.
The Witcher's daughter, Marcy, has come from Maryland with her husband, Joe, and their 3 kids.
The last time that they were here, he cried and said he didn't think he'd probably ever see them or his grandchildren again.
Hi, Marcy.
How you doing?
Love you. I'm doing fine. Good to see you.
Now, Marcy, I do have those juice things out there, too, so whichever.
It's not just him suffering, it's the whole family, because we're watching him. And I know what he wants to do, but I don't want him to do it. But I want him to be at peace. It's a struggle trying to figure out, okay, do I side with you, or do I side with my heart, or do I side with what society says should be, or what the legal system says you can do. I'm still struggling with what I feel.
Our Father, we thank Thee for these and all Thy blessings. Forgive us our many sins. We beg for Christ's sake. And dear God, thank You for letting us get back down here to visit with our family one more time.
I think all of us have an idea of what we think we do in a situation, and when it comes to that time, we may change our mind. But he'd said, when I get to where I can't do anything for myself anymore, well, the first thing he said was, when I can't wipe my bottom myself, I don't want to live. The next step was, when I can't feed myself, I don't want to live. Well, I'm having to feed him now, and he still wants to live. He still wants to see his grandkids. So far as having said that by such and such time I'm going to, he has not set another deadline to me now.
I realize that, but now that I can't raise my hand, I'll get a bug or a itch on my nose, and you just have to, it's just mind over matter.
I'd never make it. He is worried that he's going to have to be able to administer whatever he chooses to do to himself, and he's going to have to do it before he is totally incapable of doing it.
He would have to swallow it himself?
Yes, sir.
But with his hand,
I know.
how can he get it?
I don't know. I don't know, and I don't know that I want to ask, you know.
You haven't asked him?
Yeah, I have, and he hasn't really said. So I don't know whether he's got something in the back of his mind that he thinks he can do, or what, and it's not something I really want to talk about, you know. And I know I need to, and probably need to for his sake. But I'm guilty of keeping just as busy as I can around here, so I don't have to face it, you know. I don't know how to explain that to you, but...
You're doing a good job. You mean you just don't want to think about that moment?
Right. You know, he's asked me if I want to be there when he dies. I don't know.
Ooh, getting a little reckless there, Davis. Yes, that's Sassy, you're right.
He wants his life to end
Peacefully.
on his own terms.
On his terms
I think.
instead of on the disease's terms. And I understand that, but who says you get to decide?
You remember Spirit? Spirit remembers me too.
That Spirit, I think Spirit does remember you, doesn't The spiritual side of me says that's God's decision. That's between you and God, Dad, and when God deems it necessary, then that's when it's going to happen.
Remember Sassy? Hey, Spirit.
I always understood that suicide was wrong. It was a sin, and it was not a moral thing to do. With dealing with this situation, it blurs the lines.
What I'm talking about is my choice. This is what I want for me, and the only other thing I want is for society and people to talk about it, plan their own, decide for themselves.
To assure that he's not kept alive with artificial means, Jim has signed a living will. Susie knows what can happen without it.
My mother died of ovarian cancer. I remember when she got to the point where she could not eat anymore and she refused to eat, I begged the doctor to put a Broviac tube in her because I was still fighting to save her. That meant she had to be taken into surgery and have that inserted, And it probably might have bought her 4 weeks, 5, you know, who knows. And looking back now, I'm so sorry I put her through that. It did not make her quality of life one bit better. I should never have done that. And I'm not going to do it to James because he's legally taken steps that he won't take it. I saw my mother suffer horribly, and it came to a point that I wished I could do something. I don't think I ever had the guts to help her die, but I feel really terrible that I sustained, you know, that I made her miserable for that many more weeks. And that's just no way to go for anybody.
The decisions doctors face with dying patients are not often addressed in medical school.
Ricky is back in the hospital.
Dr. Gomez wants his first-year med students to start thinking now about how people die and the issues they will face as doctors.
He's intermittently lucid, but really not very well focused. I don't think he is in so much pain as he is delirious. His liver is basically shutting down. And Rose is there with him, his wife. He will probably die in the next 2 or 3 days is my guess. He's not getting food, he's not getting water. He's simply getting pain medicine, something for his delirium. So the question is,
hey Ricky,
what am I doing for what purpose?
How are you?
If I felt that we could sustain Ricky's life in a way that he would want it sustained, this case would be entirely different. He says that he's ready to die. Now the question I've got is, what am I going to do with IV fluids and nutrition? What am I trying to accomplish? What is his wife trying to accomplish? I think
the students hear from Dr. Gomez that he's no longer providing fluids or nutrients to Ricky Tackett.
It just seems to me that that's almost assisted suicide.
Why?
Because, I mean, water and food is just such a vital part. I mean, obviously you have to have it every day. And it just seems like that's the same thing as taking away medications. I mean, you're taking away what he needs to live.
The level of responsibility that a physician feels about end-of-life decision-making.
Susan Goins-Epley, a university chaplain, teaches this ethics class with Dr. Gomez.
That you're saying, if I remove hydration, then I've done something that's going to hasten his death, and you feel responsible for the fact that this man is dying. And you're not. He's dying because he's sick, and there's been a lot of intervention in between when he started to die and when he's going to die.
I don't seem to have much of a problem with withdrawing ventilator in you know, a person in his condition or other cases that we've discussed, but especially hydration and somewhat nutrition, I feel a little uncomfortable with that. And I understand if it's going to be an invasive procedure where you've got to put in, you know, you got to put in a central line, you got to put in a feeding tube, all those things. I understand not doing that because that's invasive action, but the hydration seems like something you can do.
I will bet you that if I hydrate him or try and hydrate him, most of the fluid is going to go into his legs and his lungs because he doesn't have enough oncotic pressure in his vascular system to hold the fluid in.
At least at this stage of the game, you feel like you're training to preserve life. Where you learn you're learning everything that works in the body, and that's your goal. And you know that that's dying is part of it, but facilitating it or even accepting it, I don't, you know, I know you have to learn to deal with it somehow, but it's not something that comes right away.
Okay. So if you want me to explain...
Dr. Gomez holds off another night, trying one last time to fine-tune Ricky's pain medication. It still isn't working.
Last night, he doesn't know what he's doing, and he got both hands trying to break my arm. And so I'm like, I'll step back and let the nurses do it. Maybe I'm agitating him. And I actually laid the cot out in the bathroom and tried to lay in there. And I had to watch them try and use the restraints and hear him scream. And, you know, it was like we have broke horses. And it was a whole lot like trying to break a wild horse. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. I don't think it's pain that's causing his agitation. I know he intermittently complains of pain. I'm not sure that that's what's doing it. I think it has to do with his liver failure.
Okay, so Ricky,
I can do almost anything I want as a physician to try and sustain his life, and I will ultimately fail. If, on the other hand, the goal is more modest and different, it has to do with accepting the fact that we are all mortals and that there is something, in fact, absolutely natural about the fact that we die, and that people whom you take care of as their physician are going to die, then it begins to raise all sorts of different questions. Not that the hydration question isn't important, it's actually very important. And if you feel a little morally queasy, which is what I think you're saying, I think that's a good thing. You should feel a little queasy. You should feel a little uneasy. It should make you think twice about what you're doing. These decisions should never be automatic or pedestrian, because they're not. They involve the life of another human being. Ricky was really clear with me that the one thing he did not want was to go out in pain or suffering. He was just very, you heard it, I'm sure, many more times than I did. So Dr. Corman and I have talked about it, and I think this is probably the best solution. I want to sedate him, but sedate him continuously rather than the Ativan every few hours. I want to put him on something that is like Ativan. It means that there's going to be no more waking up. Okay, even for the delirious stuff, that won't be there.
Yeah. I would welcome that.
You would welcome that.
He doesn't want to be this way. And that was his greatest fear, was having, he knew with liver failure, the death you had to die. You know.
Well, you don't even die that death. Let's let him rest, let you rest. All right. All right.
The decision to increase Ricky's pain medication and withdraw fluids and nutrition invites death through the door. One by one, we die. Just as every life is a particular life, so each of us dies our own death. No matter how we plan for it, we can never know for sure how death will come.
Nancy Crumpacker came by today, and we just had a little chat. She was talking to me.
Kitty has gathered her daughters, Jill and Jan, to talk about her last act and decide who should be there.
I guess, I haven't really thought through, are we going to have, like, everybody here? Do you want to be here? Do you not want to be here? Nancy does want to be here and that kind of thing. So I just, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just think about it and talk about it later.
Okay.
So, are you comfortable with that? Okay.
And I had already said that I thought I'd want to be here.
Yeah, I would too. The only thing would be if you didn't want us here, which I can't imagine.
No, that's totally not the...
I think that's kind of a given at this point.
You're just so ready to crawl. You're just so ready. And then your mom and dad are going to have their hands full.
Do you think about what's on the other side of death, if there is anything?
My belief is that you come here to resolve issues with the people that are around you, and that you come back when you haven't resolved that issue because you got to do it again. You got to get it right. When you run into people you've never met before, and it's just like they're a soulmate, you can't believe that you have so much in common and that your thinking is so the same. Well, you've probably been with that person in a prior life, and worked these issues out. I've got issues to work out with some of my family members. I'm going to have to do it again. And I hope I come back with my daughters and my granddaughter.
There's a lot of things on the caretaker that I don't know whether anybody realizes it, but I get so tired, and I think I just wish this were all over. I wish I didn't have to go through this. I want this to be over, and then I think, but that means he has to die. And then I feel guilty for having those feelings. When it's that person's desire that if all possible they could have a physician-assisted, dignified death, when there's absolutely no hope. I think it's a kindness. I think it would be an act of love.
But the law won't let Dr. Blanchard love that way.
Or me. Or his son. Or his brother. Instead, we're going to be asked to watch him suffer. And he will die an agonizing death. I mean, suffocation or starvation, both.
So at this moment, Susie, you don't know exactly what you're going to do when the moment comes and he says, I need help and I can't do it myself.
No, I don't.
You can always bear witness to somebody's suffering, but there is something very powerful about your presence as the doctor in the room with the patient who is dying.
Ricky Tackett's suffering is about to end. Within the next hours, he'll be terminally sedated. He died 5 days later. Kitty Rail didn't get the months she thought she had coming. She died within 2 weeks of our last visit with her.
It became harder and harder for her to get in and out of bed and get in and out of her chair. I came home one day, and the hospice nurse was there doing something that she really didn't want to have done, or it was really uncomfortable for her.
She said to us that she'd finally just got to a point where she felt like she had no dignity left.
And at that point, she said, I want to go ahead and do the pills, and I want to get on with it.
She said, call Nancy.
Yeah,
I'm tired of this.
Right.
When Kitty asked her daughters to call Dr. Nancy Crumpacker to bring the medication, Jill convinced her mother to wait until morning because their Uncle Tom was on a plane to Portland to see her. By the time Dr. Crumpacker arrived the next morning, Kitty could no longer swallow.
The thing that was really hard for me was I had been the one who said, let's wait for Tom. Let's not take him right now. And then suddenly it's too late. So I had some guilt there about that.
But in the meantime, Uncle Tom had arrived.
Yep. He had.
She spoke to
him. But at that
Yes.
time it was too late to administer the medication.
So we kind of all just sat there, held her hand. Jill and Trish were on one side, and our cousin James and me were sitting on one side, and our uncle and Jerry, the other friend, everybody was just sort of gathered around, and then finally there was just that last breath, and
You knew it.
yeah.
Did she die the way she wanted?
I don't know. I don't know if she did.
The way she managed it did enable her to be surrounded by family, to be relatively free of pain, and to be at home.
See, in all of those ways, I think it was the way she wanted it. That final 48 hours.
That's true.
seasons have turned at the Witcher farm in Louisiana. It's been 6 months since we last saw Jim Witcher, and now he's dying the very death he didn't want.
It is getting harder and harder for him to swallow, and he gets very tired chewing.
The creeping paralysis of ALS has reached his lungs and throat and the muscles of his diaphragm. If he sits up, he can't breathe, and because of his difficulty swallowing, he isn't eating solids.
About ready for some more tea?
One more breath.
2 weeks ago, he had a crisis.
I came into the room and found him blue.
Susie rushed him to the emergency room in town, 45 minutes away, but he still wouldn't take a respirator or a stomach feeding tube.
You're almost done.
Dr. Blanchard sent Jim home with an oxygen tank and hospice care.
What happens to you when you start to die is there is an inborn influence in you that tells you gotta breathe.
Hospice workers visit several times a week, but Susie still does the lion's share of the work, getting him up every day in his chair. Recently, they hired a neighbor to help relieve Susie, who was buckling under the stress.
You want me to take your legs over?
She comes 2 days a week at their own expense. And what does Jim want Susie to do when his next crisis most surely comes?
Just let me go. Hold me.
I want to try to honor his wishes, and I won't call the ambulance or anything. It's not going to be easy. In fact, I guess it'll be the hardest thing I'll ever have to do. And I wish I could keep him alive. But I don't want to keep him alive suffering either. I love you.
After our visit, Jim Witcher made a decision to refuse medication and food. By the end of the week, he died. Susie scattered Jim's ashes over the horse pasture.
On Our Own Terms continues on the web. Explore the issues, share your stories, and hear from others. Find resources for help at pbs.org. In the next episode, A Time to Change.
What would happen if you had to pay for this care yourself?
I'd just be out in the grass and go ahead and put me under the grass.
My goal is for people to be able to die peacefully. We can't make good deaths, but we can make better deaths.
We, the people, own the care system that we're now very unhappy with, so we could fix it.
Tonight's installment of On Our Own Terms, Moyers Undying, will be rebroadcast tomorrow at midnight. Stay with us now as Mary Alice Williams, Raphael P. Roman, and their guests look at end-of-life legal issues and the growing question of how people without families deal with their end-of-life concerns. They'll also welcome one of the nation's leading palliative care experts, Dr. Richard Payne of Memorial Sloan Kettering Medical Center. This is member-supported 13.
Funding for this program is provided by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, making grants to improve the health and health care of all Americans. The Fetzer Institute, supporting programs that explore the mind, body, and spirit. The Nathan Cummings Foundation, the Kohlberg Foundation, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, and by the Lawrence S. Rockefeller Fund. Corporate funding is provided by Mutual of America, building America's future through pension and retirement plans, encouraging dialogue and discussion. The Spirit of America, Mutual of America. On Our Own Terms is available as a 4-volume home video set for $99.95 or $29.95 for individual episodes. Call 1-800-336-1917 or write to the address on your screen.
This is PBS.
On Our Own Terms, Reaching Out is made possible in part by Jasperon.com and by HeavenlyDoor.com.
People are surviving more diseases than ever before. Our life expectancy has gone up 20 years in 3 generations. Scientists can decode human DNA, but we still don't know how to talk about dying. Jasperon brings together families, caregivers, and professionals to educate and support each other in every aspect of advanced care planning. Jasperon, the Advanced Care Planning Support Network.
HeavenlyDoor.com assists baby boomers and aging adults with pre-need and time-of-need funeral planning. Floral packages, condolence cards, jewelry, and funeral purchases are one click away. HeavenlyDoor.com, merging technology with tradition. Additional support for On Our Own Terms, Reaching Out is made possible by the Elroy and Terry Krumholz Foundation.
I'm Rafael P. Roman.
And I'm Mary Alice Williams. The question of assisted suicide has had a strong influence on the movement to improve end-of-life care in this country. We begin tonight's Reaching Out with a look at the limitations and future of palliative care.
Then we'll turn to the decisions that determine where, how, and when we die, and the question of whether we'll make those decisions for ourselves. All during the program, we'll remind you of the resources and organizations that can help with end-of-life issues, from spiritual help to legal guidance.
Bill Moyers has created a discussion guide to accompany On Our Own Terms. When you call 212-560-2888, 13 will send you a copy of the guide to On Our Own Terms and will include additional information about local resources. You can find even more information, including details about the guests and groups featured during Reaching Out, on 13's website at www.13.org.
We'll be back to the beginning of our discussion about the effectiveness and future of palliative care right after these notes.
Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center was founded in 1884. 116 years later, Sloan Kettering is the world's oldest, largest private institution devoted to cancer prevention, patient care, and of course research. It was also the first cancer treatment center to create a service devoted to the treatment of pain. In 1998, Dr. Richard Payne was named Chief of the Pain and Palliative Care Service in Sloan Kettering's Department of Neurology. Dr. Payne is an internationally recognized leader in pain management and palliative care. We're happy to welcome you to 13, Dr. Payne.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, let's start with the state of palliative care in the United States. Is it good enough now to provide a good quality of life to all or most patients?
Well, I think when the principles are applied competently and appropriately, yes. But I would have to say that the standards and the quality of palliative care is not uniformly excellent throughout the country. We have a challenge to make that so. But we are making progress.
So the answer is no.
So the answer is no for many people, but there are certainly areas of the country, and now in most major cities, there are experts, there are doctors, nurses, other healthcare providers who have some expertise and competency in palliative care, but clearly we need to do more.
Is it possible for a patient in a palliative care situation to also have the quality of life that allows him or her to be able to do the things they've been accustomed to doing before?
Well, of course, it depends on the stage of their illness, and often if one is dying, of course, there may be functional limitations based on the fact that one has this terminal disease. But the ultimate goal of palliative care and pain management, indeed, is to manage the patient in a way that provides a level of pain reduction or symptom reduction that allows the patient to function optimally. So we don't view it as a success if we have a patient who has pain and they get such a large degree of medications that they are too sedated to function. That's not a success. So we change their medication. We treat that sedation. The goal is to provide pain relief, for example, and in the context of maintaining the patient at their highest possible quality of functioning.
Yeah, a question that's raised all the time, and it's this. Is palliative care or comfort care only for the dying?
No, it isn't. Now, clearly the sort of precepts and concepts of attending to physical symptoms, dealing with the patient's spiritual and emotional issues, and treating the patient and their family as a whole, in a holistic sort of concept, was sort of pioneered in this country as part of the hospice movement. But if you think about it, all of those goals, all of those concepts are really just about giving good medical care. And so what we're now talking about is moving these concepts upstream in the process so that even at the time of diagnosis of your cancer, your doctor should be attending to symptoms, should be thinking about how to deal with your emotional and psychological well-being, and that's what we're really talking about in palliative care.
Yeah, but the idea of that palliative care is for the dying, that's out there, isn't it? That's what scares some people when they're told, when the doctor approaches them about comfort care, correct?
That's right. There's this misunderstanding that that palliative care means less care, means giving up on full medical care. And what we're trying to say is, no, that's not the case. What this is about is really getting back to what medicine has traditionally been about, and that is really caring for the patient, a whole patient in the context of their disease. And that this isn't about less care, it isn't about giving up care, but it's about infusing these important principles in the mainstream medicine.
Dr. Payne, one of the fears that families have when they hear the concept of palliative care is no intubation, no feeding tube. They're going to allow my loved one to starve to death.
We talk with patients and their families about goals of care. You know, what is the most appropriate thing to do at this point in time? Now, most people who are dying, and particularly who may not be responsive, generally, if they're not responsive, they don't really have this thirst. They don't really feel thirst, or they don't really feel hunger. And I think it's important for us to talk with families about that, because to put a feeding tube in may in fact be not really appropriate for what the overall goals of care is to provide maximum comfort for the patient, and to not do anything that's unnecessarily intrusive or invasive. If people are awake enough to perceive that they're thirsty or hungry, of course they should be given food, but to artificially feed someone is often just not appropriate.
I want to throw another misconception and point of concern that people have at you, and that is that palliative care involves drugs, morphine derivatives, most of them, which in more poverty communities are restricted in the pharmacy. They're really not allowed to sell them at all. And this whole idea of a patient saying, well, gee, I don't want to take that, what if I become an addict? Can you discuss that at all?
Well, let me just say that pharmacies can sell them in minority and medically underserved neighborhoods. There's a variety of very complex reasons why they aren't available there. It may relate to the fact that physicians who serve patients in those communities don't write for sufficient medications, but there's also a concern among the pharmacists that these medications can become a reason why they may be subjected to theft, etc. Now, for the patients, I think it can be a very dehumanizing experience, not just an inconvenience, but a very dehumanizing experience to go to a pharmacist or to a pharmacy in your community and have the pharmacist question the legitimacy of getting this medication and question whether or not you're really seeking drugs as opposed to getting a needed medication for your symptom of pain or other symptom. So I think we really have to look at the root of this problem of unavailability and address it at a community-wide level, a physician level, and a pharmacy level.
Really quickly in a minute that we have left, the structure and the practices of hospitals have to change for palliative care to become regular practice, right?
Yes, I think they do have to change. I think the hospitals have to be more of a mindset that it is a legitimate thing to provide palliative care. They have to look at institutional policies and procedures which impede continuity of care, impede access to the physicians and nurses and social workers in the environment who know about this.
And the health insurers?
And the health insurers have to understand that this is an important and legitimate part of medical care, and that one thing that I think will drive the health insurers' concerns is if we have a public out there, a consumer out there, who is sophisticated and smart enough to sort of begin to demand these things. So I think we have to approach these on a number of levels.
Okay. Dr. King. Go
I
ahead.
might also say that the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Hospitals now will be looking at hospital policies and procedures around pain management in particular. And I think that will be a big incentive for hospitals to look at their policies and procedures to improve the way in which they're delivering pain management specifically to their patients.
All right, Dr. Payne, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Physician-assisted suicide is not a legal option for people in 13's community, but there are groups that want to change public policy when it comes to choices at the end of life. If you're interested in finding out more about the questions of physician-assisted suicide, you can get the discussion guide for On Our Own Terms. Just call 212-560-2888, and we'll send it to you, along with a copy of 13's guide to some of the local resources and groups that can help with end-of-life issues. Here's more.
Judy Grimaldi was a social worker who dealt with the problems of sick elderly people. As she worked with her clients, she became convinced that what they really needed was legal counsel. She went back to school and is now in private practice as an elder law specialist at a firm specializing in elder law. William Isley's path took him in the opposite direction. As a lawyer working for a medical center, he found his work often concerned the social problems of frail elderly patients. He is now the New Jersey Department of Health's Ombudsman for institutionalized elderly people. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Can you, Judy, give me a story that illustrates why you changed careers?
Well, as I was working in the hospital, clients would come to me with a lot of fear. Fear, what should I do about Mother? Is it proper for me to make decisions about her care? How do I finance her care? Can I take her home? What are the risks? What are the questions? And for me, they were rooted in legal questions of who had the right to make choices, who had the right to make decisions, and how do you finance care, legal and financial, and sometimes even tax questions. And I naively said, why don't you see your family attorney? And they'd roll their eyes and say, my family attorney, well, he closed on my house, and he did my grandmother's will, but what does he know about this? And I realized I needed a place. I needed a place in this system where I could blend my social service skills and my understanding of how the hospital works and the choices people need to make. And then I needed to root it in good financial and legal planning, and that's what I did.
And Bill Isley made the transition from a law practice to going to a state to get some of this institutionalized, right?
Right. Well, Mary Alice, 25 years I practiced law, and as you mentioned earlier, I represented a major teaching hospital, and we were frequently in court seeking guardianship for patients in the hospital who had no one to assist them in making decisions. And I learned very quickly that it was not a legal issue most often that brought them there, but a social issue. And the court would often appoint, in those days, attorneys to serve pro bono as guardians for people who had no resources of their own. And those attorneys would struggle to make the appropriate social decisions for people whom they had never met before the court appointed them as their decision maker.
What have you accomplished as Ombudsman for the state of New Jersey?
Well, the one thing that I am extremely proud of is that recently, within the last 2 years, we have implemented a program in training for palliative care teams at the bedsides in nursing homes in New Jersey. We started with a pilot project a year ago, did 10 nursing homes in northern New Jersey, where we actually had a team go to the bedside and work with the caregivers, the direct caregivers, including the chaplains, including the dietitians, in teaching them the techniques of palliative care. What came as the greatest surprise, we did a pre-test of their knowledge in this area, and very few scored more than 50% on the pre-test, including the physicians, including the nurses.
Wow. I want to get right down to basics here. What's a living will?
A living will is a document very similar to a will, and that's witnessed by two people, and it can be, there's no statutory form, there's no right way to do a living will, but it should include your direction on at the end of life, and end of life could be terminal, no hope of recovery, there's no treatment no longer necessary, that you outline what choices you want. I do not want to be resuscitated. I do not want artificial respiration. I do not want antibiotics, but what I want most of all is pain relief. And that's usually the guts of a living will. And it should be then given to your physician to know what should happen in the case of this terminal illness.
Bill, what common missteps do people make?
In New Jersey, we don't use the term living will, we use the term advance directive, and it's a more inclusive term because in addition to what Judy just described, what we call the treatment directive, you can also include a proxy directive designating a person to make decisions for you if you're no longer able to do so.
What if the proxy predeceases you?
Hopefully you've designated an alternate proxy, and of course, if you're well advised in preparing your living will, you will designate an alternate to serve if your first choice either is unwilling or unable to serve. One problem that we see very frequently is that in giving both a designation of a person to make decisions and providing guidance for that person in the decision-making process, the person who is writing the advance directive does not indicate which will control. And sometimes the proxy's decision-making may be different from the language, the strict language of the advance directive.
Whereupon a court steps in?
Well, I think that it depends on your state. In New York State, the proxy has power over the static document of a living will. The individual who can sit down and reason with the physician and take the medical evidence in and actually come up with a decision usually trumps the living will because that's just a statement of treatment, whereas the person really enters into partnership with the doctor, and it's rooted in your ability as an individual to have informed consent. So your proxy can have informed consent and make decisions.
Very quickly, last question.
Decisions.
How does the system approach the issue of palliative care?
Well, when you mean this, when you say the system, I'm not sure exactly what you mean. The judicial system usually does not approach the issue of palliative care. Palliative care does not often come up in guardianships, but the state of New Jersey, at least, is making great strides in developing training programs for palliative care in both hospitals and long-term care facilities.
In general, in the legal, most courts use a best interest standard and substituted judgment. So if there's no advance directive, then the courts would allow the individual to substitute the judgment of a reasonable person making these decisions. And those are all the classic court cases.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll be back with more about maintaining control at the end of life after these notes.
5 million Americans in the United States are now believed to have Alzheimer's disease. By the year 2015, that number is projected to triple to 15 million. For people who have Alzheimer's, planning for the end of life presents special problems. About 25% of people with Alzheimer's live alone. Sue Humphreys is social work director for the New York chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. Jean Murphy of FRIA was co-editor of Elder Care in New York, the consumer's guide to long-term health care. Welcome, both of you. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
First of all, about how many people, Sue, about how many people in the tri-state area have Alzheimer's or age-related dementia?
Numbers are hard to pinpoint, but the Milbank Quarterly did a study in 1990 looking at the 1990 census and came up with an estimate of a little over 400,000 people in the tri-state area with the disease or a related dementia.
Now that's, as I said, projected to triple by the year 2015. Why?
Well, it may take a little longer to triple. Some estimates say up to 50 years from now before that number triples. However, the reason for an increase in the number is simply that we're going to have a lot of baby boomers moving from middle age to old age. Medical technological advances mean that people are living longer and surviving into old age when they might have died of another illness instead. A variety of reasons have coalesced to make that happen. So we definitely feel without a cure and without treatment that slows down or stops the disease at onset, we will see an increase. Right.
Now, Jean, maybe you can answer this. As I said, about 25% of people with Alzheimer's across the country live alone. Is that pretty much the case in the New York area? Either one of you?
I think I could probably answer it. We don't. That figure I'm not familiar with, but what we do know is that according to the 1990 census, approximately 33% of those who are over 65 live alone. And that population, we think those over 85 have as much as a 50% chance of getting Alzheimer's or another dementia. So certainly we are looking at a booming problem as the numbers increase.
Now, what kind of things need to be done to allow these people who are living alone to prolong their independence?
One of the things that we suggest, because we orient our services very much toward community and living in the community, and Jean is oriented toward helping people in the institution. One of the things we suggest that people do is, well, first of all, the legislative agenda needs to really orient itself toward making it more feasible for families to help the people with a disease like Alzheimer's to stay in the home. They need better access to daycare. We need better access to Medicaid services. Right now, Medicaid seems to somehow tip in the balance of institutionalizing someone with the disease. And then most importantly, if you want to stay independent, you need to do the documents that other discussions have discussed, the healthcare proxy, the living will, the durable power of attorney. Those documents need to be signed by each one of us when we're healthy and don't have disease, so that as we move into disease, if that happens, decisions can be made for us that are our decisions.
I mean, I agree with the advanced planning. I mean, I also think there's a real advantage to having a family or friends and community support in staying in the community longer. There are some social services that provide some of the things that families do, and I'm thinking of the geriatric care managers, and there's not enough of them, and more money for that kind of community support for people who don't have family doing it for them would help. I'm also thinking that in another kind of advanced planning might be to, and this is for people both with families and without, but to move from a situation where you're living by yourself in isolation into some kind of supportive housing or assisted living, which is a growing kind of community setting, and that it doesn't keep you in your own home, in your own community necessarily, but it allows for more independence for a longer time.
Generally, what are your main concerns about elderly who don't have families, particularly elderly who live in nursing homes who don't have families?
Well, you know, some of the biggest problems occur for everybody. I mean, nursing homes, the staffing levels, particularly everyday hands-on direct care staff, are just not sufficient to do what needs to be done. But one of the things that families or regular visitors, friends, would do for someone in a nursing home, and to some degree this is true in home care in the community as well, is playing this role of monitoring the care, of translating to the caregivers, to the medical providers who this person is, and of speaking up and becoming an advocate when they really see something wrong.
Now, what kind of rights do people who are in nursing homes have?
Well, you know, to be honest, the regulations that govern nursing home care in New York State are really very, very good. And if we really did what was in the regulations, we would have, you know, it really would be a very, very different picture. Many of them, they're not really enforced. In
the regulations are there, but they're not enforced.
That's right. People have a lot of rights. And
how do we get them enforced?
Well, I'll tell you, Freya works on that a lot. I wish there was a simple answer to it. You know, we've certainly made improvements in the last 20 years, and there are certain kinds of regulations that are better enforced now. Having the real political will from the top of the state government to say this is what this Department of Health is supposed to do helps. But I mean, we have a lot of language in the regulations that talks about individual autonomy and dignity and respect for the individual person and, you know, really personalized care. And that kind of stuff the regulators don't seem to go in and say, no, you're not doing that. And I think that people without regular visitors and families suffer in that, you know, more so than those who have the
well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, our time is up, but I thank you very much, both of you. Mary Alice Williams and I will be back with more right after these notes.
At the end of life, the effects of public health care policy make every step of care a challenge to the patient, their caregivers and families, and health care providers.
Tomorrow night at 9, On Our Own Terms, goes to Birmingham, Alabama. There are 21 hospitals in Birmingham, but only one takes every patient, regardless of ability to pay. That includes those who don't have health insurance, who don't get Medicaid or Medicare, and who don't have the resources to pay for their care. A Time to Change introduces some of the crusaders who are working to change public policy and improve care for people who are dying.
At 10:30, Reaching Out will try to bring some of these issues home to 13's community. And all through the program, we'll remind you of the many resources in 13's area for people who need help to manage the end-of-life issues they face. Please join us, starting at 9 tomorrow night, for the last chapter of On Our Own Terms, followed by Reaching Out.
And remember that you can find additional information about resources in 13's communities at www.13.org. To get your copy of the discussion guide to On Our Own Terms, you may call 212-560-2888. We'll send you a copy of the 27-page guide, plus a copy of 13's local outreach brochure. Thank you for watching 13 this evening. We hope you'll join us tomorrow night at 9.
On Our Own Terms, Reaching Out is made possible in part by Jasperon.com and by HeavenlyDoor.com.
People are surviving more diseases than ever before. Our life expectancy has gone up 20 years in 3 generations. Scientists can decode human DNA, but we still don't know how to talk about dying. Jasperon brings together families, caregivers, and professionals to educate and support each other in every aspect of advanced care planning. Jasperon, the Advanced Care Planning Support Network.
HeavenlyDoor.com assists baby boomers and aging adults with pre-need and time-of-need funeral planning. Floral packages, condolence cards, jewelry, and funeral purchases are one click away. HeavenlyDoor.com, merging technology with tradition. Additional support for On Our Own Terms Reaching Out is made possible by the Elroy and Terry Krumholz Foundation.
This Thursday, Think 13. At 8, from San Francisco to Detroit to New York, Rivera in America paints an illuminating portrait of the American work of one of Mexico's greatest artists. At 9, Hetty Wainthropp investigates a suicide and a strange disappearance on Mystery. And at 10, it's a revealing look at the life, loves, and scandals of trend-setting Princess Margaret. That's Thursday, so Think 13.
The way we see it, everyone the world over should add 2 words to the end of their address. Planet Earth. Then, take a look around. Think 13.
Movies or architecture or photography or dance or television, they are the people who are, breaking new ground and writing the rules.
You can't say they shouldn't be.
What they shouldn't be?
You're saying flatly they shouldn't be in jail?
The lives of people who are blazing trails are interesting lives.
Go ahead. Make my day.
They are filled with drama. They are filled with conflict. They are about trying new things and overcoming obstacles. Every single story, I'm astounded over and over again at how rich these stories are and how much we find in them. Sometimes they're going to be celebrities, sometimes they're going to be legends, and sometimes they're going to be people that nobody's ever heard of, but they should still be in the series because they've made that kind of an impact. They've changed the way we hear, they've changed the way we see, they've changed the way the written word is presented. It's about the impact of their work and a body of work that's going to stand that test of time.
15 years of award-winning biographies, American Masters.
Produced here at 13.
Funding for this program is provided by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, making grants to improve the health and health care of all Americans. The Fetzer Institute, supporting programs that explore the mind, body, and spirit. The Nathan Cummings Foundation, the Kohlberg Foundation, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, and by the Lawrence S. Rockefeller Fund. Corporate funding is provided by Mutual of America, building America's future through pension and retirement plans, encouraging dialogue and discussion. The spirit of America, Mutual of America.
Discovering what it's like to live in the light of death, it just blew me away.
We will all die, but how we die, what happens before we die, is under our control.
No, 400 micrograms.
We'll do it to the best we can for as long as we can.
I'm not afraid of dying. I don't want to die anytime soon, but I'm not afraid of it.
Have you had enough breakfast? How we come to the end of life now is different. It takes different answers, new solutions.
He wants his life to end
peacefully
on his own terms.
You are doing a wonderful job. You're a wonderful sister.
Here's to family and friends and love.
Is it possible to achieve death on our own terms?
I've seen many people do it.
I'm Bill Moyers. In this final program of our series, we'll see that improving care for the dying is going to require a lot of sweat and work in the trenches of our Byzantine healthcare system. That's where most of us will wind up at the end of life. According to a Gallup poll, almost all of us want to die at home. But in reality, most of us, 4 out of 5, will die in hospitals or nursing homes. The care we get there will depend on many people's decisions, on who's doing the caring and how it's paid for, and on the system itself. But every death takes its own course. Every family has a different set of issues, and not everybody has a place to die. So how is our hope for a good death going to be realized? Who's going to take care of the nuts and bolts of dying? And how do we fix the system, our system? The people in this program have something to say about all this. They're foot soldiers in the movement to improve care for the dying. They know that if we're to have a better death, now is the time to change.
Arthur Brown, Anthony Burton, Charlie Anderson, Daphne Bowman, Derek Brackens, Reginald Eatman.
These are the names of the dead,
Edward Chandler,
folks who've died here in the past 6 months.
Arthenia Cooper.
Gathered are the families and loved ones of those who have died.
Bobby Jackson, Jimmy Jackson.
Also gathered here are the caregivers, those who comforted the dying during the last months, weeks, and days of their lives. Pioneers in a new movement to change the way we care for the dying.
Lois Johnson.
Here in Birmingham, Alabama, a crusading doctor and his team are weaving a web of care for the dying and their families. Their effort has attracted nationwide attention. Dr. Amos Bailey wants no less than to change the culture of dying in America. He labors in the very heart of a public hospital, where he's created a hospice unit called Balm of Gilead, after the famous spiritual.
Mr. Smith, I saw your family up here yesterday. You were kind of grumpy yesterday.
What?
Uh-huh. You wouldn't take some of your pills.
I wouldn't think I'd ever be grumpy.
Well, I was surprised. You were singing today when people came in.
I was singing when they come in yesterday.
Bailey and his team provide palliative care, a fancy word for comfort
Don't
care,
worry about it. It's okay.
a holistic approach to caring for the dying.
Was the problem, we might be able to help.
Oh, I know
but
that.
we're not upset with you. I wanted to do it because I walked around the hospital and I saw bad things happening and I wanted to do something to fix it.
Do you feel like you're doing any better than you were yesterday, or what do you think? I think you're feeling a little bit better, too. You seem, I tell you what, you are one tough woman. Yeah. I've told you that before, but I mean it. Because, you know, you just keep bouncing back.
Edwina Taylor is Dr. Bailey's partner in this crusade. She's been a nurse for 29 years and now is a palliative care specialist.
Dying people have a lot of issues that they need to resolve to be able to die peacefully. And that's my goal, is for people to be able to die peacefully.
Mr. Phillips,
We can't make good deaths, but we can make better deaths.
is there anything else that you'd like to tell me or ask me today? Anything you want me to do? Anything at all?
Are you breathing okay? Are you? Okay.
Balm of Gilead is the first and only palliative care unit in Alabama. And while it's part of a new movement across the country, the Balm is different because it's one of the few units that serves the working poor and the uninsured, the people who fall between the cracks of Medicaid and Medicare.
I need to kind of help push you up.
1, 2, 3.
Good. Okay, these hips, let's move this pillow.
Constance Adley drove a school bus until breast cancer forced her to quit work. Now she is dying. Like the other patients on the Balm of Gilead, she no longer receives treatment to cure her disease. She's been at home with hospice care.
That's about the best we're going to do.
Constance is 29 years old, and she's been on our home hospice program for about 2 months. But in that 2-month period of time, she's had to come back into the inpatient palliative care unit. This is her 3rd time. And we think that she will stay here now until she passes away.
How long?
We don't know for sure.
What are you trying to do for her?
Well, we're keeping her kind of sedated. How's that? I'm giving her enough so that she can be awake and comfortable and be with her family for as long as ever that may be. And I'm not trying to necessarily prolong this or shorten this. But I am trying to make that time meaningful and comfortable for her. Constance, I'm going to listen to your heart, okay?
Okay.
All right.
And I'm going to listen to your lungs.
The goal here is to stabilize dying patients so they can return home. They may have to come back when a crisis can't be handled by family caregivers.
The hospital was willing to let us do this because if we weren't here, Constance would be in the hospital anyways. I mean, there was no way that Constance could be taken care of at home. And she would be upstairs in one of the regular parts of the hospital, kind of mixed in with people who had pneumonia and everything else. And it wouldn't really be concentrating on what her symptom control is.
You having pain?
A single mother, Ms. Adley has 2 children, aged 6 and 9. While she's here at the Balm of Gilead, her 2 sisters care for her children as well as their own. They take turns sleeping in her hospital room at night.
How's her son doing? Does he understand what's happening?
Yeah.
How's he taking it?
Not too good. I talked to one of the nurses yesterday about him getting some counseling.
Right.
Because he's going to need it. He needs to start now.
Have you talked to his school?
Yeah, I talked to them, and they said they were going to try to get some help for him.
Okay, because there is a pretty good counseling system through the Birmingham School. I've dealt with them before. And then Magnolia Place is a place for children who have had losses. And I'll get Jane to hook you up there.
Okay.
Okay?
But she's not going to get no better, you think?
No. I think she will stay here in the hospital from now on. Okay?
Can we do anything to help you? You know what?
I read the book.
Good.
Okay.
You're a wonderful sister. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
You are doing a wonderful job. Everybody should have a sister as good as you.
Mrs. Adley has a very supportive family, but she's 29. They're very young. It's not realistic to think that they're going to be able to pull it all together to be able to handle her at home, continually.
I wrote letters for both of her sisters to have a leave of absence from work. And even doing that, they're not able to, as they said, really concentrate on taking care of her solely. They have to make sure those 6 children are okay.
And they're taking off from work, but without pay.
Without pay, yeah. So they're making a huge sacrifice.
So dying is a real spiral for the whole family.
It impoverishes a lot of people.
Right.
What about her children? Have they come to see her?
Yeah.
Yeah, we brought them Tuesday. It was her oldest little boy's birthday. He turned 9. I have 2, she have 2, and Constance have 2, so...
It's 6 children, and all.
I had to let her be there with the kids and stay here with her because she just don't want to be alone.
I have a hard time imagining a mother of 29 dying.
Me too.
And we don't have a mother nor a father. It's just us 3.
It's obviously a great comfort to you to have her here with Dr. Bailey and Edwina.
Yeah. She don't trust nobody else.
She said he's good to her.
And Edwin.
Yeah.
What are you doing with this stress to take care of yourself? How are you handling this?
I just pray and go on. As long as Lord give me strength to come and see about her, I'm all right.
Every death is a particular death, isn't it?
Yes. They're all very different, and this is not an easy one.
And especially with her children, nobody can mother your children like you can. And I think that is such an enormous issue with her that all I can think of when we see her every day is that, like that poem says, she won't go gently into that good night. It's going to be a struggle all the way.
Birmingham was once a mighty iron and steel town, the Pittsburgh of the South. In the 1960s, it became infamous for its violent resistance to civil rights. Today, healthcare and biotechnology have replaced the rusty foundries. Yet in this biomedical hub, a third of Birmingham's population lacks health insurance. And of Birmingham's 21 hospitals, only one is a safety net hospital, treating people regardless of their ability to pay. That's Cooper Green Hospital, home to Balm of Gilead.
Hi, Dr. Bailey here.
Dr. Bailey oversees the care of patients here at the Balm of Gilead, as well as some 30 patients who are receiving care at home from Birmingham Area Hospice. He's medical director of both, and every week he brings the two teams together, since his patients often move back and forth between home and hospital.
The other issue is about there are two different dads and about whether or not who's going to get custody.
Well, she didn't tell me there were two different dads,
Two
but
different
she
dads.
did say that the father would be taking the children at that point.
But she's put out a paper now that she wants her sister to have them.
Oh, really?
I think her concern is that he only wants one and not the other, and she doesn't want to break them up.
Around this table are nurses, home health aides, social workers, ministers, and even a musician, all part of a team assembled to provide continuing care.
Let's talk about James, who's 48, has HIV, congestive heart failure, strokes, and was non-compliant with medicine, but since being at home is compliant now. We have a meeting twice a week where we sit down and we talk about what everyone is doing for a particular patient, and we come up with a plan, and the plan is about taking care of the physical needs, but what are we doing about that social problem of no one to help the wife take care of the husband? And what are we doing about someone who's living in a condemned building because they can't find other housing and we're trying to find new housing for them, or they don't have any income because Social Security has turned their disability down again and they have to reapply. So we address those things every time we sit down to talk about a person. So we'll just have to see what the situation is and whether living at home without a permanent caregiver is a reasonable option for him.
Miss Harris, would you order some watermelon from Miss Everson for lunch, please? Thank you.
Okay, let's see.
We've
How
come
is that?
all the way up to the top part of that cake.
How is that?
All the way up.
Is that good?
The first priority at the Balm of Gilead is physical suffering, alleviating the patient's pain and distress.
All right.
Suffering has four aspects. There's physical suffering, there's emotional suffering, there's spiritual suffering, and there's all kinds of social suffering. But you cannot take care of someone's emotional and spiritual and social suffering if their physical suffering is unmet. Because if their physical suffering is unrelieved, then nobody, the patient, the family, their friends, can focus on anything else.
Are you having pain anywhere else besides your swallowing?
No.
Yeah. Right now, no? Okay. All right. Well, could you rank your pain on your swallowing for me? You know, 0 is no pain, and 5 is the worst pain in the world, like having a baby. About a 3 today? Yeah. Okay. All right.
Treating pain as the fifth vital sign is one of the groundbreaking innovations of the palliative care movement.
No.
There are four vital signs traditionally: your pulse, your blood pressure, what your respiration rate is, and what your temperature is. And so someone came up with the idea, and it wasn't me, that you'd have a fifth vital sign, and the fifth vital sign would be you'd ask somebody what their pain was like. But we've gone beyond the fifth vital sign. We understand that this is how people can rate their pain, but they can use the same kind of method to rate how their appetite is, how their breathing is, and some people just use it to tell me how they feel in general.
You know my little chart that I always have. I want you to tell me where on this you would put your breathing. This is no difficulty, and this is you can't breathe at all, hardly. How would you say your breathing is doing?
About 4.
You're still having a good bit of trouble then. Okay. One of the things we do is we don't use oxygen mask. We use nasal prongs because put a mask over your face, it smothers you. You know, and
you can't talk.
You can't talk. You don't feel like you can breathe good, although you're getting so much air into your face. It's like being in a wind tunnel. And people who are trying to save lives are using measures like this that are clinically correct, but comfort-wise, they're disastrous for the patient. They make them feel bad. And those kind of invasive things are things that we can avoid and make people more comfortable.
Right.
Suffering at the end of life is not only physical. There are no charts for what some people call soul pain.
Somebody called my sister. She's up north, and she done got here, and she worried to death, and she's not gonna leave until she sees I'm better.
I just try to enjoy time with them, to really listen, really pay attention. I try really hard to pay attention.
Listening is important to them, for them to talk to you, to feel that you're listening, that you're their witness to death.
That's the greatest gift you can give to a person, is to really listen to them and to pay attention. And I think that if I can give that gift to a person, then I've done my best. Hey, buddy. I hadn't seen you in a while. How are you doing? Nobody wants to die alone. And if you can stand with the person, you don't have to say anything profound. We don't have profound enough things to say. But it's such a powerful thing for them to know that they have somebody standing with them, that it's okay to talk about dying too. They don't feel like it's okay to talk to their families sometimes. I mean, how many times have you heard people say, don't tell Mother she's dying?
Yeah, Mother won't be able to handle it.
Mother won't be able to handle it. Mother might start crying or something. Well, so what? You know, that's a natural emotion.
Right.
What the problem is, they can't handle Mother knowing that. So it's important for us to kind of stand in the gap and enable them to honestly communicate with each other, at least give the family and the patient us to honestly communicate with.
You know, whatever he wants. And Fred said, I want a beer. And they said, you can have a beer. And he said, yeah, my doctor said I could have a beer. It was okay. So I told him he could have 2 if he wanted to.
So the philosophy is let him have what he wants.
That's right. If he wants to eat bacon, why not?
Every Friday, Dr. Bailey makes house calls to patients receiving hospice care at home.
He's got enough coke to take it with him and make more.
And then that's my other one at 3 a day. The heart.
Willie Fred Davis is dying of lung cancer.
Give me all that stuff to make my heart, make me feel better, and then give me that to slow my heart down.
With the help of Birmingham Area Hospice, he's been able to stay at home. His wife, Shirley, is his round-the-clock caregiver.
Well, you go take you a nap. I'll be here if you need me. You can holler.
Called there while I tell him, I said to come on over here.
Mr. Davis has had some pretty rough times. He's not as active as he once was. He continues to lose weight.
I'm going to lay down while I probably go to sleep a little bit.
He has a loving wife who is in pretty good health. He has children who are nearby. And so he's going to be able to stay at home. There's really not going to be any reason why he would have to come back into the hospital, probably. I mean, there is a potential for some sort of crisis that we couldn't handle at home. But this is your more typical hospice patient that should be able to stay at home. Hello, Mr. Davis.
Hey, Doc.
It's good to see you, and I brought some friends with me today.
All righty.
This is Mr. Moyers.
How are you, Mr.
Nice to
Davis?
meet you.
Thanks for letting us come.
You're quite welcome.
How are you today?
I don't feel all that good. I'm weak feeling.
Can I sit down?
I've been all week.
You've been feeling weak all week?
Yeah, I had some dizzy spells Tuesday.
Cassandra Jackson is Mr. Davis's hospice nurse.
Do these rails go down in?
How often do you come?
I come once or twice a week. It just depends
Once or twice a week and calls 3 to 4 times a week.
I think I bother him so much. I call him all the time, but when he's asleep, I talk to his wife, and she lets me know how Mr. Fred is doing.
Yes, and calls regular.
So what is it you try to do?
I come out and I try to make Mr. Fred comfortable as he can be at home. We make sure that the patient is comfortable and the caregiver is comfortable.
If I'm about out of medicine, it's either there that day or first thing next morning. I don't run out. She checks it. If it's enough for one day, I've got it the next day.
Willie Fred Davis had no income once he got sick and no health insurance. And at 53, he was not yet eligible for Medicare.
Which would have been 3 days.
Davis applied for Medicaid to pay for his medical expenses and for disability to have something to live on.
Can you tell me how much you get?
$821
$821 a month.
But in Alabama, if you earn more than $454 a month on disability, your Medicaid is cut off. You then have to wait 2 years after you get disability for Medicare to begin covering your medical expenses. By that time, most of Dr. Bailey's patients have died.
Without insurance, life is kind of chaos, isn't it?
Right. Miss Davis, you don't have insurance, do you?
I can't afford it. Not to have 2 jobs, have insurance.
And you can't afford a doctor if you don't have insurance
So what do you do?
without it.
You don't go to a doctor? How is it, Mr. Davis, that you wound up without any insurance?
Companies I've always worked with. I ain't never worked but with one company that had insurance.
What did you do for a living?
Well, I've done truck driving and maintenance. And I worked in oil field in Texas out there, and I worked asbestos out there. And I did insulation work, insulating houses back when I was a lot younger, blowing it in the ceilings and putting it in the walls and everything. And they say that's where I got most of my asbestos from.
So none of those companies provided insurance. Well, now, what was it that enabled someone like Mr. Davis to be here at home?
He has a home to go to. That's a very important thing. He has his utilities on. We go to places sometimes that don't have electricity, or what's really a problem is no phone. Because if he doesn't have a phone, there's no way for him to call and tell us that something is happening, or Miss Davis to call and tell us something is happening. And he has a family that is able to stay with him. He has the basic things that you have to have in order to be at home.
But do a lot of people that you deal with not have these things that we take for granted?
Yes. Phones are a luxury.
What would happen, Mr. Davis, if you had to pay for this care yourself?
I'd just be out in the grass and go ahead and put me under the grass.
The cost of caring for patients like Willie Fred Davis poses a challenge for Greg Townsend, administrator of Birmingham Hospice. He's in charge of the bottom line.
Greg, I have a prescription. A list of our patients. I made copies of what I'll do. I'll just put the prescriptions back in our office.
When they are reimbursed at all, Birmingham Hospice is paid just $95 per patient per day from Medicare and Medicaid.
And all the services that we provide, the medical director, the nursing services, the social services, the DME, the drugs, the home health aid services, all the services that we have to offer are taken out of that daily reimbursement rate.
You called about a geomat for one of them?
Called, yeah. Not
Yeah.
geomat.
What was it?
A low air loss mattress.
No, I lost mattress.
What's the price?
$700 a month. And that's a discounted price. They normally charge about $900 a month.
The challenges that Greg was mentioning that the hospice nurses deal with, they also deal with in the inpatient setting on the Balm of Gilead.
James Bolden is Townsend's counterpart at the Balm of Gilead.
Who's making up the difference between what you get reimbursed from Medicare, Medicaid, insurance, and the real cost?
Taxpayers?
Yes.
Yeah, with the county indigent fund, I know with Cooper Green Hospital, it's heavily reliant on that county indigent fund.
In fact, Bolden manages a complex mix of reimbursement from Medicare, Medicaid, church contributions, foundation grants, and the county indigent fund.
One thing we do know is that a routine hospital day can cost up to $1,500. And if we can provide care in the home rather than that person going into the hospital, we could save $1,000 or more by providing that care in the home.
The driving force of the home hospice movement comes from caregivers like Cassandra Jackson, a nurse for more than 20 years. Daily, she travels the length and breadth of Jefferson County to check on her patients. This afternoon, it's Faye Birch.
Dixie. Dixie? Ignoring me. Come here. Dix. Come here. Come here.
Mrs. Birch, when she was first admitted to our program, she was very, very lonely. The day that I admitted Mrs. Birch, she had me with teary eyes because she was very teary-eyed. And her main complaint was depression and loneliness.
You see a fly?
Sometimes she will call hospice and tell hospice that she's alone. She wants to commit suicide.
Why cry today?
I have no one to help me. I have no one to get my medicines. I have no one here with me. And when the hospice nurse on call or myself called Mrs. Birch back, she would say, well, I was just lonely. And I thought I would just tell you that. So maybe you can come visit me. It goes back to her family situation. She's unhappy because of her relationships with her son.
Faye Birch is estranged from 2 of her sons and lives with another son who's seldom home. Hospice usually requires a full-time family caregiver, but Dr. Bailey and Birmingham Hospice try to adapt to each family situation.
Good evening, Mrs. Birch.
Hi.
How you feeling today?
I feel pretty good. I'm having trouble breathing.
Having trouble breathing?
Must be the weather.
Ms. Birch was herself a nurse.
Probably is.
She worked 2 jobs while her sons were growing up.
Yes.
But when she got sick, she had to quit work, and then she lost her health insurance.
Have your shortness of breath gotten worse?
She was forced to go on disability. Cassandra Jackson comes to see her a couple of times a week.
So have you been lonely lately?
Lonely?
Mm-hmm. Have been lonely?
Yes.
Okay. But
it gets old staring at 4 walls on the television.
Mm-hmm. With hospice, you can't be in and out real fast. You have to take your time. You have to be there.
And I watch TV and nod off. That's my night.
Okay. Sometimes it's just holding the patient's hand. Sometimes it's just watching TV. Sometimes it's reading. Sometimes it's just being there, just listening to what the patient has to say. And if the hospice nurse can take the time or spend the time, you will learn something on each visit.
I felt better about the whole situation, about my illness, about it being terminal. I know that. For the most part, I've accepted it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's hard when you have family. You don't want to leave them. I'm not afraid of dying. I just don't want to die by myself.
What about your 2 other sons? Have you talked to them about?
No.
I've talked to them briefly, but sometimes it's, especially with my oldest brother, it's almost like, talking to a brick wall. It's just like,
He doesn't want any part of it. And right now, what expenses, like on my medicine, I need help with, it's up to Richard, and that's not fair. I've got 3 sons, and they ought to all pitch in and help him. If not for me, for him. It makes it hard on him.
She really struggles with this estrangement that she has from her own children, and she's a demanding person, and they may be burned out. I mean, the fault is on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And we pray and I get hold.
We do a lot of counseling with the families.
There are 4 things that people have to do. They need to be able to say, I forgive you, please forgive me, I love you, and goodbye.
And thank you.
And thank you.
That's right.
And thank you.
Right.
We probably need to give him something for his calcium, too, and I'll write that later today. All right. How is Fred doing?
Fred is doing okay. I saw him on Monday. He's complaining of more pain in both shoulders. He told me his pain was at a 5.
maintenance are getting pretty big.
Fred doesn't want to be asleep all the time. He wants to still get out and go. So therefore, he won't take his pain medicine. But when he does take it, his pain is relieved. You all doing pretty good today?
Oh, yeah.
Good. Mr. Fred back here.
Hey, Donna.
Hey, Mr. Fred.
How you want today?
How you feeling today?
Oh, here. No, you got another hairdo now.
Yeah, got another hairdo. How many beers you drinking a day with your medicine?
I ain't drank the whole one in 5 days.
5 days, okay. Okay.
I ain't drank the whole one in 5 days.
Okay.
I just don't care much about it. If I get one, I just sip around on it.
So have your appetite decreased in the last 2 weeks?
It's about the same in the last 2 weeks. Ain't it?
Yeah, it ain't got much worse, but he still don't eat. He's got where he eats, 4 or 5 times a day, and instead of just eating 3 times a day.
Do you find yourself often nursing the family more than the dying person?
A lot of times I do, especially that wife that has been married to that man for 30, 40, 50 years. You have to take care of that wife or that caregiver. Listen, let them do the talking. You have to just be there to comfort them and to let them know that even though your loved one is dying, I'm here. I'm here for you. I'm here for your loved one. So now the medicine that we increased on last week, if you're still having pain, more pain, you can increase that to 3 pills twice a day. So it just depends on how your pain is.
I don't want to overdo myself. More like you said, he wants to keep the pain down. But I don't want to immobilize myself where I can't do nothing except lay around. I just soon take that pistol laying in there and be gone. Before I just have to lay there all the time.
Mr. Davis, for the past 2 to 3 weeks, he was still trying to hold on. He was on a morphine pump. I upped the pump to relieve his pain. Mr. Davis told me, well, you can cut the pump down because I don't want to sleep all the time. If I die, and when I die, I'll die sitting up. I will not lay in that bed and die. And he did not lay down and die. He was sitting up. He woke up one morning. He told his wife he was smothering and that he was dying.
Watch that pot down there now.
I don't watch you, woman. Go and just get out of my way.
She called hospice. She called me. And when I got there, he was dead. And he was sitting up in the bed with his feet hanging on the side. He died on Thursday. His birthday was Friday. His family had planned a birthday party on Friday. So when he died on Thursday, all of his family came from Walker County. A lot of family members. I had never met these people before, but they came in and they talked to me about Fred's childhood, and it was just a time. It was a happy time, even though he was gone, but his family was so happy knowing that he had gotten the best care that he could have received in the end.
What about Faye Birch? How did she die?
Miss Birch was in the hospital maybe 2 weeks with pulmonary fibrosis, end-stage problems with her lungs. And she stayed in the hospital on the bomb for about 2 or 3 days, and she went home. And after she went home, I think she realized that she was going downhill, did not have a lot of support from her family. And I think she just more like gave up. On Thursday, her son called me and said that she was not responding. And after I got there and listened to her vital signs, she did not respond to me either. So we called an ambulance, and she was transported to the Balm of Gilead, and she died within 2 days.
Did she die peacefully?
She died peacefully.
Well, there had been some difficulty in the family, some alienation. Do you think reconciliation occurred?
No, it never did.
There are people who die here who we don't feel like we have accomplished the goal of relieving their suffering. I mean, there are people whose emotional and spiritual situation never became reconciled.
Right.
And it's a very, very sad thing.
Some people's needs are so deep and their suffering is so deep and it's been lifelong that it's like putting your fist into the Grand Canyon. It doesn't make a tremendous amount of difference. It may make a little difference, but it doesn't make a tremendous amount of difference when the needs are lifelong. And we get faced with that sometimes.
Praise the Holy Witness. Praise your Lord. Yes, Jesus was. I can tell the world so. Yes, Jesus loves me. For the Bible tells me so.
I do take it home with me sometimes, yeah. Especially if we have a lot of deaths at once. It kind of piles up, and I feel real sad. Yeah. It does happen occasionally, or if somebody I really love dies. I can't help taking it home. When somebody like Constance Adley dies, part of my heart breaks off, but it regenerates. And, I mean, I feel it very deeply. I don't think I'll ever get used to people dying that I care about. But it does regenerate.
I pray a lot. I find a lot of comfort in prayer and knowing that I have done all I could for my patients. It gives me a sense of peace and relaxation.
Another thing we do, though, too, is I don't watch sad movies.
Yeah, I never watch any medical.
We never watch any movies about dying because we already gave at work.
That's right.
You know, we don't have to do that.
My question continuously is who bereaves the bereaver? You know, because you get so involved with the families, and then you go to the home for the death, and then you go home alone, and then there you are, you know, and who comforts you?
I had a visit with his son last night. Pretty long visit.
How did that go?
Kind of fine. I kind of explained to him how his dad was doing and about his liver and everything. The fact that he's so sedated because his liver is not doing well. And I also talked to 2 of his church members today. This former pastor came up and asked if maybe we could get some more support from the church to sit with him some at home if he does go home.
What was his pulse today?
His pulse, when I felt it, was 66. It was actually reported earlier to be 80s, 90s.
So that's actually much better.
Much better than
Yeah, because it was 50 yesterday morning. It was 70.
The lessons these pioneering caregivers have learned from experience are now changing the culture of medical training. Dr. Bailey has been instrumental in establishing a new requirement for Cooper Green's medical residents. They now must spend part of their residency on the balm of Gilead.
And see, now I get my triad that I love to use in palliative care. Opioids, steroids, and a major tranquilizer.
Every day, Dr. Bailey gives a short class to residents about palliative care.
We talked about the paradigm of suffering, and we talked about his physical plan, emotional, spiritual, and social issues. Maybe over the next couple of days, we can start to address these more. And then you have to take people from one kind of approach to another.
Right.
There has to come a time where sometimes you say, what we've been doing is actually doing more harm than good. And it's time...
You mean in the regular care?
In the regular care.
They're trying to prolong life.
Right.
Right.
Right. People died in the intensive care unit, and, you know, the goal was to keep their blood pressure up, not to keep their pain under control. Their goal was to keep the oxygen flowing in and out, not to allow their family to be around them at the very end.
A lot of doctors can't admit that the patient's going to die because they see it as failure. They just can't help but feel it's a failure.
I understand.
You know, and I can too, you know, because doctors are trained in cure. And so it's a different orientation for them.
What I want to see happen is these same principles of helping people feel better at end of life and treating the suffering, the whole person, the emotional and spiritual and social side, I want to see that infused into regular medical care. And that's why, we talked about putting, doing the pain score in the regular part of the hospital. That it's not just because you got cancer and you're dying that you get excellent pain control. What about the guy that broke his leg? Well, why can't he have excellent pain control too?
Had any of you had any experience with death and dying before you became residents here?
No, not at all.
This was your first time?
Absolutely.
What did you think when you arrived on the unit?
I guess kind of vastly out of my realm of experience, because we're not really taught to address such issues as death and dying in medical school. We certainly receive very little exposure to it during medical school, and it's just really not discussed.
No course in death and dying?
No.
Or how to care for the dying?
Some in the medical ethics classes, but generally you just don't have that kind of exposure clinically.
Dr. Bailey, to me, is just amazing, but he also teaches you, because we were just driven. We're aggressive naturally. We're taught to just go out and kind of take care of this problem. And he kind of teaches you that, it's very therapeutic sometimes not to do anything. It's very therapeutic to just sit and listen. And sometimes that's all people need.
Are you able to talk to them about dying?
I'm still not totally comfortable about it. I don't think you can be with just 3 years of experience as a resident. And it comes with experience talking with people like Dr. Bailey, who have years and years of experience. You recognize it's okay, it's really okay to be a doctor and to be human. It's okay to cry at a patient's bedside when they cry, and I certainly did do that on a number of occasions. It's okay to say, I don't know why this is happening. Certainly we'll do everything we can to make it be comfortable, but I don't know why. And generally that's not something medical school teaches you to do.
How have you been doing today, Mr. McClam?
Still around.
Still around. That's
still kicking, so we just said.
That's a good thing, don't you think?
Dr. Bailey,
why is he here?
Yeah, what's the prognosis?
Well, he has lung cancer that's metastatic to his brain, and he had some radiation therapy. And we tried to let him go home to stay with his grandmother, who raised him from the time he was 2. She's 88. And actually very frail, and it didn't work out. He was home for less than 24 hours, and he had to come back because he can't get up to the bathroom, he can't get up to the chair by himself. He's really very limited in what he can do.
Has your grandmother been to see you recently?
Yeah, I see her every now and then.
There now and then. What about your band members? Have they been by recently?
Yeah, they come last every time.
Uh-huh. Mr. McClam is a trombone player. And he has a picture of his band at bedside, and he's got these electric red trousers on, he's smiling. And for me, when I saw that picture, it was a moment of, this is a person in a previous life, and I wish I'd known him before he became so debilitated.
It's not pretty looking at a dying person.
No, but I think you get to the point where you have a relationship with them, and you don't. When I see Mr. McClam, who was cachectic and who was dying.
Which means?
He's wasted. He's got just diffuse wasting from his disease. It's saddened. It definitely saddens me, but I don't see that as much as I first did when I first met him. And at first, he was not in control of any of his bodily functions. He was shaking. He was very unsteady on his feet, and I was overwhelmed and terrified by him because I had no idea. Even though he probably weighs maybe 95 pounds at most, I didn't know what to do with him. And so I called Dr. Bailey, and we eventually, through some very minor things, got him more comfortable, got him to feel like he was controlling his bodily functions, his body, better than he was before.
Today is the day that he's supposed to have his disability hearing. And if he gets disability, then it will be possible to consider finding a long-term placement for him. But right now, he doesn't have insurance. And he hasn't been approved for Social Security disability yet. And so he can't get that, he can't get Medicaid. He basically is boxed out of all kinds of resources. It easily takes from the time people stop working until they get their disability 4 months. We're only halfway through. And we have a lot of people who end up just staying here indefinitely because before that disability comes through,
Nothing can be done. No other arrangement.
and they have gotten it worse during that time, and then they can't go home.
I'm hoping that my case is like that.
We do too, and we've sent all the paperwork in, but you know, the government works slowly. It just takes time.
While the government took its time, Nate McClam's grandmother insisted on caring for him again at home. Nate was able to spend a couple of months with her before another crisis sent him back to the Balm of Gilead. The search for a place for these patients to live out their last days is a constant struggle for Bailey's team. Patients may have no full-time caregiver in the home, or their loved ones may not be capable of taking care of their needs. Bailey's team must then look for an alternative. One option is a nursing home.
Well, Mr. Smith, I'm going out to Ketona Nursing Home today, and I'm going to look for a place for you. I talked to your family about it the other day. Mr. Smith is a patient that we actually got from the intensive care unit about a week ago, and he has had a long history of heart disease.
All right, lean forward.
Probably this is the plateau. This is as good as it will get for him. He has a wife and a daughter, and he's a very large man, and they cannot physically manage to pick him up and move him like he will need to be. And so we are investigating having him go to the nursing home because it's not going to be feasible for him to return to his own family's home.
What about his staying here?
Well, the problem with staying here is that we're not licensed as an inpatient hospice.
Which means that if he stays here, you wouldn't get reimbursed.
That's right.
Is he insured?
He has no insurance. He could get Medicaid if he goes to the nursing home.
So right now, the costs are being borne by the public.
That's right. And he is the responsibility of the public as a whole for his care. I mean, we are together responsible for each other. I mean, that is how the social contract works, I think.
It's moving day on the Balm of Gilead. Bailey's team has scrambled to find a home for Lois Johnson, who is alienated from her family and has no other place to go. Dr. Bailey has arranged for her to stay at Ms. Hill's boarding home. Sandra Arnold will be her hospice nurse there.
A chance to stretch out, you know.
A chance to stretch out.
I won't be so stiff, and I hate to leave y'all.
She's been estranged from her mom for a long time because she apparently was put in a mental institution when she was 16 and was in and out of mental institutions for the next 30 years. And in the past several years, she's lived with her mom, but they've had a lot of emotional strain between them. So Lois made it real clear to us before she left that she really didn't want her mom to know where she was going.
And do you know I was homeless?
I know you were homeless. Yes,
and
honey.
it hurt me so bad, you know, I just really did.
But you know, we're gonna.
My mother would do me like that.
We're gonna take good care of you, and you're not leaving me. I'm going with you.
Well, it's good.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with you, and of course I'll be your nurse. I'll be coming out to see you, and making visits and supplying the stuff that you need and everything. But you know, you're not gonna be homeless anymore. Don't cry. You got tears rolling down your face, honey. Everything is going to be okay. It's going to be all right. We're going to take very good care of you.
Okay, doll.
Okay.
Sit up here for me. Let me show you what all this stuff is, okay? Now, Sandra is going to help you with your medicines to get everything, you know, set up the way that you need to take it, but I've written some notes on here, okay? And I'm going to show you what each of these is and when you need to take them, okay?
Y'all gonna let me do it? It'll be messed up.
I'll set it up in a pill box for you.
But I just need to let you know.
Yeah, we'll set it up in a pill box.
Okay, you've got potassium, which you take 2 in the morning time, at about 9 o'clock in the morning, okay? This is your cough syrup, which you take in the morning, and then as you need it through the day, every 8 hours, okay? This is your pain medicine, the pills that I give you. And you take one at 6 o'clock in the morning, one at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and one in the evening time before you go to bed. Then you've got your Clonopin, which is your nerve pill that you get every morning and every night. And this is Senecot, this is your laxative, okay?
More than half the shift at the Balm of Gilead sees Ms. Johnson and her worldly possessions off to her new home.
It's really nice. So it's been a while since you've been outside.
Boarding homes are a relatively new experiment for the Balm of Gilead. Lois Johnson is only the third patient to be sent to Ms. Hills.
It's a little tricky because you really are dependent on having a primary caregiver. And when they really, really got sick at the end, the person taking care of them is not their family, it's the boarding home owner. And he or she rightfully may feel like, I signed up to provide a bed and 3 square meals a day, not this intensive kind of care. So someone in a boarding home is much more likely to end up coming back to the Balm of Gilead to die. I've told boarding home people that if you feel like you cannot handle anymore, then I will take them back into the hospital, but try for me.
Right this way, honey. Okay. Okay. Just rest there for just a minute, okay?
We took Miss Lois out to the boarding home, got her set up there. I ordered her some oxygen and a wheelchair to be delivered to the boarding home today. I did set her medications up in one of the Medi-planners, because she was very concerned about her medicine when she left here, that she wouldn't get them on time. We're also going to get Anita to see her 3 times a week for personal care, her bath, and her personal needs. Also, one of the ministers will be visiting her along with Jane and myself.
Good. What do you think you want for lunch?
Well, just whatever.
Soup and sandwiches?
Just whatever.
No, now you got to. I want to pick something that you're going to eat. I don't want to waste it.
Miss Hill, became her primary caregiver and actually did more than we really had kind of made an agreement or contract with her to do. And Miss Johnson enjoyed living there. She had her friends visiting her there. She wasn't bothered by her family, which she was estranged from. And she got to leave the hospital. And so while it didn't last as long as we all perhaps had hoped that it might last, I think it was a success.
Mm-hmm. I was homeless.
Bless your heart. Well, I'm glad you're here.
And I'm glad to be here.
You can say you got a home now.
I didn't know people care so much. You know that? I really did.
But we do.
Yeah.
Miss Johnson was there for several weeks, but now she did come back into the hospital, back to the Balm of Gilead, and she passed at the Balm of Gilead.
Peacefully?
Peacefully, yes.
The majority of people who die in Birmingham, as in the rest of the nation, are seniors. They're in their 70s and 80s, which means they will die in a Medicare-funded health system, a system under stress.
Okay. Do you have your Medicare card with you?
It's in my billfold and it's down in the office.
In the office. Because we're going to need to get that back, and tomorrow when I come to see you at home, what I'm going to need to do is make sure that they gave me the right number.
John Reagan is 85 and dying from prostate cancer. He's preparing to leave the Balm of Gilead today and return home with hospice, but with no full-time family caregiver.
And take it with you. There's also a patient identification card that identifies you as a Birmingham area hospice patient.
Mr. Reagan, Brenda has been to see him.
Yes.
Okay. And we're concerned that he might get mixed up on taking his medicine.
I'm concerned about that, too.
We're all concerned.
We're all concerned about that. That's why none of
Care
us...
of himself at home. We're not excited about him going home.
No, we're not excited about this setup, but he's insistent, so
yeah.
I know. We're
The friends
right.
and not related loved ones taking care of him is making me nervous. Okay, Brenda's going to see him this afternoon.
Good.
She came today.
So she's going to set up his meds.
And she's going to set up his meds in a MedMinder thing.
Good.
So he can take them daily. And I'm going to page her right after lunch when he goes home so she'll know what time to go.
Right.
Put this in your bag with your medicines and things so that it'll go home with you.
Well, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Just so long as they don't put me in there.
No, we're not going to put you in there.
We won't unless you start causing trouble.
And I will see you at home this afternoon.
He wants so desperately to stay at home. And we try to honor people's wishes as much as we can. So we tried to make all this work, communicating with neighbors and friends and church members, but when it came down to it, there were just too many holes in the fabric.
He couldn't manage to take his medicine the way he was supposed to. I mean, we set it up in boxes and things like that. And that's what a primary caregiver would have done, you know, would have made sure that he took this when he was supposed to and this when he was supposed to. And he just wasn't functional enough at 85 with his kind of anxietal symptoms to be able to do that correctly. And then it was a vicious cycle, and it landed him in a nursing home.
I've worked hard all my life.
Because Monmouth Gilead had no contract with nursing homes, Dr. Bailey could no longer supervise Reagan's care. So that care was disrupted at the most critical time of his life. When we went to the nursing home to visit him, he told us he had rarely been out of bed in a month. The day we arrived with cameras, he was treated to a physical therapy session.
Did a lot of exercising this morning for what I've been doing, and that's why I think that's why I put well. Bad.
Did Daryl work you out?
No, not yet.
No.
I just walk around myself. But I don't want to overdo it, because I know that can hurt you as bad as not doing anything. I've been here over 3 weeks now. Nearly 4 weeks. And that's the first time I've been on my foot. Most is just sitting in the bed and going to lunch and all that. And going for a checkup and different things like that. It's not exactly fun, but I've had worse things happen to me. So I'm not going to worry about it.
If we're not involved, then the work that we've done can sometimes get undone. You know, the plans that were made get forgotten. And so it's very important to, I think, have continuity.
To provide that continuity of care for patients like John Reagan, Dr. Bailey has been battling to get Birmingham Hospice into local nursing homes. After a 2-year effort, he finally signed a contract with Jefferson County Nursing Home, including classes for the staff on palliative care.
But again, dehydration may be protective. This is one of Dr. Bailey's favorite things to talk about, because it's always a struggle of mine to know whether to give the person something to drink or not.
The nursing home will be the primary caregiver, so if people are going to die in the nursing home, which we know they're going to, and it happens, you need to be able to help the staff who are acting like their family be prepared, just like the people that we prepare at home.
You know, and again, like we know, it goes without saying, go by what the patient wants. You know,
in creating this web of care between home, hospital, and nursing home, Dr. Bailey has a formidable ally on the national scene, Dr. Joanne Lynn. She has come to learn about Bailey's experience here at Jefferson County Nursing Home.
Hello, Miss James. This is Dr. Lynn, who's a friend of mine from Washington, D.C., who's coming to visit people with me today. Okay?
Hello, good to meet
see you.
Good to see you.
I know that you have a hard time talking, but I also know you understand, you know, everything that we say. Didn't you used to work here as an aide? A nurse, that's right.
Okay.
How are you feeling today? Not good?
Well, I don't know.
Kind of low, huh?
Kind of low, a little blue. Miss James had the stroke. And after she had the stroke, she wasn't able to care for herself. And she was living alone, and her son was employed, and the daughter-in-law was ill, apparently. In any case, she eventually came into the nursing home. She's left with a very severe deficit, obviously. And was very depressed.
Very alert mentally.
Yes.
Inside there.
Right.
Are you unhappy with your room? No, it's fine. What about your roommate? That's okay too? No? Are you?
I'm wrong.
Do you want to go on somewhere?
I want to go home.
You want to go home? She was very depressed and basically wasn't eating and having frequent hospitalizations because of this progressive deterioration. And so they asked us to start seeing her to manage the symptoms.
Being in hospice.
Under hospice. But she's much more animated. I mean, this is week 4.
Much better now.
Atha James, like many elderly patients, suffers from numerous complaints and disorders. And like the others, her dying time may be prolonged. But Medicare requires a 6-month terminal diagnosis for hospice care. So if Atha James takes too long to die, she may have to be discharged from Dr. Bailey's care.
These are exactly the sort of patients who need you the most.
Right.
But if you're successful, they will fail to die and they'll have to leave you. And that undoubtedly will not be good for her emotional well-being. If you talk to anybody for 10 minutes on this issue, they've got to tell you their story. Well, anybody over 40.
From her base in the nation's capital, Dr. Lynn is trying to change our health system to meet the needs of the dying and their caregivers.
It isn't just a private calamity. It's happening to so many people. It's a terrible thing that people can't count on the care system as they come to the end of life.
Joanne Lynn is a physician, professor, and writer, and director of the Center to Improve Care of the Dying.
The system we've got reflects where we put the money. And we have put money in transplants, and we have put money in developing the very best of drugs.
But we haven't put money in end-of-life care.
No, in fact, we have quite adverse incentives. We have built into the care system incentives so that neither managed care organizations working with Medicare nor fee-for-service providers working with Medicare can put in place good comprehensive services. There's no incentive in the current care system for continuity. If you've got terrible heart disease and you're going to have it all the rest of your days, one of the obvious things you need is a doctor who's going to stay with you all the rest of those days. And yet every medical care system will make more money in Medicare if they switch you around, do procedures, put you in the hospital. You know, nobody really pays attention to what's really happening in your life.
Because they only get paid for procedures, and mostly for procedures done in institutions, right?
We think of change happening at 3 levels. We think of change happening in the way that doctors and nurses relate to patients and families. A second level is the very local care system needs to do a better job. And then at the 3rd level, we need to change public policy. We end up taking care of people who have accumulated serious illness in a whole hodgepodge of programs that were never really designed around doing that well or efficiently. How is it possible that it is easier to get a hip replaced than it is to get a nurse visit on a weekend? Why is it you can't get a home health aide to help you in a piece of time when you, the caregiver, is sick? Because we never built that into our care system. Why is it that caregivers lose their health insurance? Because we never paid attention to it.
Good morning, Brenda.
Good morning.
How are you doing today?
I'm fine.
Good. How is Miss Scott doing today?
Well, I'm doing pretty good.
Doing pretty good? Good.
B. Scott is being cared for by her children, Brenda and Frank,
with the help of Birmingham Hospice.
She just had her bath, and she usually be asleep, but she holding on right now. Okay. Okay.
At 77, Miss Scott has had strokes, kidney failure, and diabetes that led to amputation of both legs. Yet her children are determined to care for their mother in her own apartment.
And the last morphine she got was on yesterday when she complained of chest pain.
Frank said he gave her some. Frank, did you get some last night? Yeah. Okay.
Although Medicare covers Miss Scott's hospice expenses, it doesn't help her children, who are making huge sacrifices to care for their mother around the clock.
I'll tell him that.
The strain on this family has got to be really quite severe because she can't be left alone, and they don't leave her alone, and they don't live there, and they're not allowed to live there. So there's someone from her family coming for 8 to 12 hours every day, and then they're relieved by someone else who spends the next 8 to 12 hours there. And they've done a wonderful, beautiful job for her.
Frank, you gonna feed her now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay.
She was doing pretty good up until November the 11th. I called her from work and she could barely talk. I said, well, I'll see you in a few minutes. So I got off work on the 11th of November about 12 o'clock. And I have not been back.
Brenda took off 8 months to care for her mother. During that time, she lost her job, her home, her car, and her health insurance.
It's hard, but by the grace of the good Lord and my daughters, my brothers, I've been able to maintain. Now, I promised my mother that I would not put her in a nursing home. Whatever I had to do to take care of her would be done. And that's why she's right where she is today. I wouldn't change nothing. I wouldn't change a thing.
Are you crying, Miss Scott? Eyes just watering.
I don't cry. I don't worry about nothing. I told them don't be worried about me, too.
You don't want them worrying about you? Miss Scott had a very good, peaceful death. But her daughter, Brenda, had stopped working.
And this wiped her out financially.
This wiped her out. So after her mom's death, she went back to Detroit to live with her daughter. So a lot of our patients don't have anything before they get sick. After they get sick, it wipes the caregiver and the patient.
Caregivers, family caregivers, need an awful lot of help from their community. Right now, we mostly sort of see it as, you know, your problem if you're taking care of your mother. But what if we instead said, well, that's rather like the National Guard. You know, it's sort of something you're doing for your family, but on behalf of the whole community. And we all ought to rally to help you out with it.
But we are, in fact, talking about a population that is largely very old, very poor, and very female. And that is not a voting constituency. And those are not the people who command the attention of the power brokers on Capitol Hill, right?
Yeah. When you say people are largely poor, the image that people bring to mind is people who've been poor all their life. And what we need to come to recognize is that these are people who are newly poor. They mostly live their lives in middle class. And they become poor because their husband died and the pension went, and then they got ill, and they used up their savings, and now they're the poorest they've been since they were married. And all they have...
Healthcare costs.
Well, healthcare costs and the cost of living while disabled.
So when we talk about dying on our own terms, we're not just talking about the individual autonomy of a single death. We're talking about how the whole community acts and behaves and cares for all of us who are dying.
Exactly. We just can't really just walk away from it. More and more people are seeing what their parents are going through as something they've got to speak up about. And not only for their parents, but for themselves when they get there.
That's my sister. Is that me? That's me right there. That's the one in New York.
At 89, Florine Huff has been taking care of her ailing younger sister for several years. What's happening now puts both of them in jeopardy.
This is the one up there sick now, Portia. That's her.
Portia Boyd, her sister, is 87. Ms. Huff is growing too fragile to look after her.
Everybody's at home around here. I don't have any company, so they see it as is.
Hi, Miss Boyd. I'm doing really well, and I have
take that dress off, and I still left it on the bed.
I have a friend to visit with you today from Washington. This is Dr. Lynn, Joanne Lynn. This is Miss Boyd.
Nice to meet you. How you doing?
Did you enjoy your barbecue?
Oh, I forgot to tell you. Did I? It was delicious.
Good.
And peas. Can you get?
Yeah, I know.
That was so good. I enjoyed it.
Great.
When Ms. Boyd was diagnosed with lung cancer, she moved from Pennsylvania to Birmingham to be cared for by her sister.
Good thing you have each other. Taking care of me. I give her a lot, all the credit. Not all, but most credit. Because she's really good to me. Very good. Hadn't been for her, I don't know where I would be. That she's taken very good care of me.
The two sisters hired Miss Susie Davis to help them with their meals and medication. This is her first week on the job. Medicare doesn't cover such an expense, and it's not clear how long they can afford her help.
Father God, in the mighty name of Jesus, Lord, we thank you for this food that we're about to receive, for the nourishment of our bodies in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Now, can I put some jelly on your bread?
They've been able to manage for 2.5 years, but Mrs. Boyd is not as able to get around as she was. And Miss Huff, I think, is developing some dementia, and she was repeating herself, forgetting what she said, was not handling Mrs. Boyd's medicines very well, even though they're very simple. And they weren't even able to really handle, for instance, cooking meals and preparing food in the house. So we all were concerned that they might both end up needing to go into a nursing home situation, which neither one of them want. They really need to be together.
Isn't it amazing how in a flash, both people could be in a nursing home and medicated pick it up, but you have to string it all together to make it work to stay at home?
Right. Ms. Boyd could go into a nursing home more easily since she doesn't really have that many possessions. This home is owned by Ms. Huff. If Ms. Huff had to go into a nursing home, then her assets would have to be spent down. In this state, you have to spend down to $1,500. So they'd have to sell this home.
Where are we going to have people live who are terribly frail and disabled? Are we going to really make it possible for their children to all take them in? Are we going to arrange it so they all have children? You know, many of them have outlived their children. I've got lots of 90-plus-year-old old ladies whose children are already gone. Who is going to take care of them if we aren't going to build nursing homes capable of taking care of them?
You've said, Dr. Lynn, that people should be in special customized programs that they can count on. You know, something like an Alzheimer's end-of-life care. But wouldn't that cost a lot of money to tailor our health care to meet the needs of a particular dying person?
We're already spending the money. We do not put patients like this on the street. We end up spending it. We end up spending it out of Medicare or Medicaid or private resources. It's more a matter that if you could pull it together and make it make sense, have the right services, I can get any patient a trip to the ICU if they need it. Can I get a patient a meal delivered on a weekend? Can I get a patient narcotics if they don't have the money to pay for it? No. I mean, these are just gross, non-functioning arrangements in our care system.
Well, why don't we change it? I mean, the dying aren't going to change this. It's too late for them to have an impact on the system.
Well, let's do change it. We, the people, own the care system that we're now very unhappy with, so we could fix it.
Did you sleep okay last night?
When you're talking about major social change, there's so many obstacles. And the biggest obstacle is that we're used to how we've been doing it. We need concrete services. We need doctors who know how to provide good pain relief. Nurses who are really terrific at being able to manage patients who are becoming increasingly bedbound. We need to change how we pay for care so that it's possible to make a living doing it right. We can get an ambulance out. We can transport the person. We can put them in the ICU. We know how to do those things. We don't know as well how to sit down and talk with a person about how they want the end of life to be lived. We haven't done it as much. We haven't put it on TV. We haven't talked about it. We need a culture to learn a lot about how to do this well. And it's not right off the shelf.
You have one time to get it right, one opportunity to get dying right. So you have all these bad experiences that people have had dying in the last 30, 40, 50 years. And all the culture sees that. I mean, it's always this horrible thing that happened. And if you can change that by helping Mrs. Adley's family or Mr. Smith's family have not a happy experience, but not the horrible experience they thought it was going to be, then they're going to go to their friends or their family and say, you know, it doesn't have to be the way it's happening to your family member. Or later on, if they're in that kind of situation, they're going to agitate to say to the doctor, why are you doing this to me? Why can't I have hospice? Or why can't you give me enough pain medication to control my symptoms? And what about my emotional, spiritual, and social problems? What are you going to do about it? I think that you'll build a culture of consumer demand for it.
But don't you feel you're in an uphill fight in a culture that wants to deny death and doesn't want to look at it? And
yes, I do feel it's an uphill battle. I'm amazed, though, at how this happened. I mean, a year ago, this was an abandoned part of the hospital. Now it's a very alive part of the hospital. It's kind of a strange word to use about the part of the hospital where people are coming to die, but it's very alive.
how are we going to change our culture?
One starfish at a time. I know you know that story.
No.
Well, the person's walking along the beach, and he sees a little boy, and there are lots of starfish that have washed up, and the little boy is throwing the starfish back in the ocean, and the man says, "Son, why are you doing that? It's not going to make a big difference." And the little boy throws one more starfish in the ocean, and he says, "To that one it will." And that's how we're going to change the culture, is one person at a time, one dying experience at a time, one family at a time.
There is a bomb to make the wounded whole. There is a bomb to heal the sin-sick soul. Sometimes I feel discouraged and take my words in vain, but then the love of Jesus refines my soul again. There is a balm to make the wounded whole. There is a to heal the sin-sick soul.
On Our Own Terms continues on the web. Explore the issues, share your stories, and hear from others. Find resources for help at pbs.org. In a moment, Mary Alice Williams and Raphael P. Roman will continue 13's look at local resources for people with end-of-life needs. Among their guests, representatives from Cabrini Hospice, from the Family Center, and more. Also, tonight's episode of On Our Own Terms, Moyers on Dying, plus our local follow-up, will be repeated tomorrow beginning at midnight. This is member-supported 13. Stay with us. Funding for this program is provided by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, making grants to improve the health and health care of all Americans. The Fetzer Institute, supporting programs that explore the mind, body, and spirit. The Nathan Cummings Foundation, the Kohlberg Foundation, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, and by the Lawrence S. Rockefeller Fund. Corporate funding is provided by Mutual of America, building America's future through pension and retirement plans, encouraging dialogue and discussion. The Spirit of America, Mutual of America. On Our Own Terms is available as a 4-volume home video set for $99.95 or $29.95 for individual episodes. Call 1-800-336-1917 or write to the address on your screen.
This is PBS.
On Our Own Terms, Reaching Out is made possible in part by Jasperon.com and by HeavenlyDoor.com.
People are surviving more diseases than ever before. Our life expectancy has gone up 20 years in 3 generations. Scientists can decode human DNA, but we still don't know how to talk about dying. Jasperon brings together families, caregivers, and professionals to educate and support each other in every aspect of advanced care planning. Jasperon, the Advanced Care Planning Support Network.
HeavenlyDoor.com assists baby boomers and aging adults with pre-need and time-of-need funeral planning. Floral packages, condolence cards, jewelry, and funeral purchases are one click away. HeavenlyDoor.com, merging technology with tradition. Additional support for On Our Own Terms Reaching Out is made possible by the Elroy and Terry Krumholz Foundation.
I'm Mary Alice Williams.
And I'm Raphael P. Roman. During the next 30 minutes, Reaching Out, we'll look at New York City's oldest hospital-based hospice.
We'll also acquaint you with a group that works to provide dying single parents with the help they need to provide for their surviving children. And we'll talk about the public policy initiatives aimed at changing the American way of health.
During this program, we invite you to call 212-560-2888 and ask for a copy of Bill Moyers' discussion guide to On Our Own Terms. We'll also include a copy of 13's own outreach guide to some of the local resources in 13's communities.
If you have access to the internet, you'll find additional resources on 13's website, www.13.org. You'll also find much more about On Our Own Terms. We'll be back to begin the conversation about how we can deal with a time to change right after these notes.
Since 1892, Cabrini Medical Center has been serving New Yorkers, particularly poor immigrants. In 1980, the medical center opened the first hospital-based hospice program in the city. And in 1992, it opened Cabrini Nursing Home.
Cabrini East Village and Haven Plaza, the hospital's family practice offices, are staffed by personnel from different ethnic backgrounds who speak multiple languages and offer outpatient medical care that is sensitive to multicultural neighborhoods. With us to talk about Cabrini Hospice and the challenges of caring for a diverse population is the director, Mary Cook, and Dr. Daniel Cow, medical director. Thank you both for being with us.
95% of your patients, hospice patients, are home patients, correct?
Actually, it's about closer to 90%
Okay,
now.
closer to 90. The other 5 to 10%, why do they choose to go to the hospital-based hospice?
Well, many of our patients come from other hospitals in New York City where they've already been treated very aggressively for whatever their problem is. And they may need to have more pain management or more symptom control, or their family may need to have a lot of teaching done before they can manage the person at home. And in other cases, patients are in such an advanced state of their illness that they really couldn't be safely managed at home. And the patients don't feel comfortable going home, or the families don't feel they can manage them any longer at home.
Dr. Cow, you're one of the few hospices that actually has a children's unit. Have children been underserved in this area?
I'm not a pediatrician. I'm an internist, so I really don't have the numbers on that, but I would certainly assume that would be the case. And Mary knows a lot more about the children's part of our hospice, which we've had for about 4 years on an outpatient basis and have an inpatient unit that hopefully will be starting up soon.
Tell us about it, Mary.
Well, as you know, the program for adults opened almost 20 years ago, and for many years we had calls from people, parents or relatives or doctors of patients who were very young. And so we came to realize that it was very important to be able to offer that service for children. We've always handled adolescents and young adults. But about 4 years ago, we opened what we call Sister Loretta Sunshine Kids in memory of our former pastoral care coordinator who had been a first grade school teacher for 25 years and then hospice pastoral care for 17 years. So we've been able to offer those services at home now for about 4 years, but it's within the last few years we wanted to be able to extend that for children who needed inpatient services. So now the parents or guardians have a choice, along with the children, if they want to go back to their hospital where they'd been treated for the original illness, or they want to come to our inpatient unit instead.
And about 43% of your patients are non-white?
That's correct.
How do you handle the diversity at Cabrini?
Well, it's interesting you ask that, because I think it's almost second nature to us. As you know, New York City is probably the most diverse city on the planet, and so it's composed of all people from all different ethnic and religious backgrounds. And Cabrini Medical Center was started by an immigrant herself, and so she knew firsthand the problems that immigrants had and their acceptance by society. So we just continued that tradition, and our goal is really to embrace all the different ethnicities.
What about ability to pay? We've just seen difficulties that Balm and Gilead Hospice has had in trying to place terminally ill patients. What happens at Cabrini?
Well, unlike many of the hospitals or health care practitioners that we might see on TV, where the first thing they ask you is, what kind of insurance do you have? That's not the first thing we ask, and it's not even close to first. It may be the last thing. We really try and determine what are the needs of the patient, how can we help them, and how can we help their families. And then after we've gone through that, if we can help them, then what's the method of payment? And so for most people, they do have Medicare, Medicaid, some form of insurance, but there are certain people who aren't eligible for any insurance. Undocumented foreigners are one group. And we don't turn anyone away because of inability to pay.
Dr. Cow, Has the influence, the palliative care influence of the hospice flowed to other parts of Cabrini?
It certainly has, and not only to Cabrini, but I think to physicians in general. For example, when I was first asked to come help take care of patients at the hospice as an internist back in 1982, every patient was turned over to me from any other hospital or any other physician because there was this unknown quantity, the hospice. And physicians were quite honestly a bit scared about working with a group that they had no knowledge of. Now we see that about 70% of the physicians stay on with their patients, and that's a very big change.
Do you see differences, Dr. Cow, in ethnicity, in the way people react to hospice?
I haven't seen that much. I'm sure there is that type of situation, but we find that when you work with whatever group of patients you're working with, what they're really looking for is for somebody to talk with them, somebody to give them information. If you can do that, if you can gain their confidence and let them understand what's going on, I think a lot of the barriers that you might think exist really aren't there.
All right, thank you both very much for being with
you.
us. There's more to come here on 13. To get your copy of the discussion guide for On Our Own Terms, call 212-560-2888 and we'll send you a copy, along with a brochure of resources here in 13's communities. For the latest information, log on to 13's website at www.13.org, where you'll find more about reaching out and about On Our Own Terms. We'll be back with more after this note. In 1997, the Family Center, once a part of the New York City Department of Social Services, became an independent, not-for-profit corporation dedicated to creating a secure future for children whose parents have a life-threatening illness. Barbara Drayman is executive director of the Family Center and has been working on behalf of the bereaved children of New York City for the past 10 years. Locke McKelvey is director of clinical social work at the center. Thank you both for being with us. We heard earlier on the Peter Selwyn talking about the influence of AIDS in the hospital system in the Bronx. When did you first understand the impact of AIDS?
Yes, for me it was in the late 1980s when I began working specifically with people with AIDS.
How did the Family Center develop out of that?
It did. I was interviewing a small boy in the Bronx, and I asked him how he was doing, and he said he couldn't sleep at night. And I asked him why, and he said, because, he said, I can't sleep because if I just hadn't gone to school that day, I could have saved my mom's life. And I said to him, well, why do you think that? And he said, because I could have called the ambulance, and then they would have come, and then they would have saved her, and so it's my fault. And I was so touched and moved, and still am, by that little boy's comments, that I realized that we had to help children be able to talk about the questions, who's going to take care of me, and is it my fault?
What services does the Family Center provide?
Well, we provide legal services for parents who have a terminal illness. We have 3 lawyers on staff, and we have a full social service component. So we help families where the parent is ill. We work with the parents and the kids to try to encourage dialogue and make the transition, if the parent is ill, as smooth as possible.
You say the parent, and you both said it. Is it mostly single parents? Is it mostly single mothers?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
And what kind of services legal services do you provide for those mothers?
Well, first the social worker visits the mother in her home, and then as the mother is ready to choose someone to take care of her children in the future, the social worker brings an attorney to the home, and they both meet with the mom and with the children if it's appropriate, and in other words, if the mother wants it. And together we all try to come up with the best kind of plan for when or if the mother can no longer take care of her children.
Is it only AIDS that threatens the mother usually?
No, it isn't. It's cancer and other illnesses as well that we deal with. So AIDS is certainly one group of parents whom we help, but it's other illnesses as well.
How old are the surviving children, and what does become of them?
Well, they range from, the age, if you call a child a 20-year-old, then we have from newborns to 20. And what becomes of them is sort of wide-ranging as well. But mostly the families, extended family, take on the responsibility of the children that have lost their parent. So it's generally family and sometimes foster care, but mostly families.
I'm interested in talking to you about the spiritual aspects of helping these kids get through the death of the only parent they've known in many cases. What do you do?
And what do I do, or
what does the Family Center do?
Well, we, what we try to do is maintain families, maintain the strength of families. And we try to do that when the parent is ill, and then after the parent dies, with a new family, we try to, again, enhance the strength of that family. If it's a grandparent, we help the teenager maybe talk to a grandparent, or a grandparent get involved in the teenager's life in a way they might not have been before. But we believe that these families have the ability to really take care of themselves, and we kind of just help them along.
What kind of, what stages do children go through as they grieve? Do you know?
I do, but I like Locke to answer that one.
Oh, good. I'd be happy to. Kids, well, they grieve differently, each kid, but you can imagine that at first they go into some kind of shock, that they have a difficult time trying to understand it. And when we work with kids who are grieving, we really try to look at what age they are. We try to use language that they can understand. A 3-year-old doesn't get the same concept of death as a 10-year-old does. So you have to focus on the age of the kid. And then they deal with the feelings that they have. After they sort of understand this parent's not coming back, then there's a whole range of feelings that occur, being angry, feeling guilty, all the sadness that comes on. And then when kids are better, they begin to reach out to people again in their lives, and they begin to get back on the developmental track that they're supposed to be on for their age. So it's kind of, I guess you could say, 3 different areas where you focus the treatment. But, each kid has variations, and each kid may drop it back a bit, and it depends.
And how long does the Family Center support the child after the parent has died?
For as long as they need it, which is often months and sometimes years. Yeah. Because children grieve at different times, and sometimes they begin before the parent dies, and sometimes not until a year after. So we need to be there in either case.
And do they have one social worker that sort of tracks them, follows them, makes sure that they have someone they can always call?
Exactly.
Yeah. Who funds you?
The federal government, the state government, the city government, and a lot of private generous donors.
And I'll go back once more to spiritual counseling. We keep thinking, as we talk about death, about the physical and emotional aspects of it, and have yet to really touch on that part of it. Do you also provide spiritual support in any way?
Well, the communities that we work in, often these families are connected already to the churches and to organizations that support them spiritually. So we like to see that enhanced, but we're not really part of their spiritual system.
All right, thank you both for being with us. And we have some notes for you and a reminder. Get a copy of 13's outreach brochure, as well as a copy of the discussion guide for On Our Own Terms. All it takes is a call to 212-560-2888. Now, those notes.
It's been a long journey through just a very small number of the issues we all face at the end of life, as most Americans will encounter it. Many of the questions about end-of-life care are fully under our control, but many are rooted in public policy. One group that's been trying to put health care reform on the national agenda is the U2K campaign. Nick Unger is an organizer for that campaign and also for Unite, the needle trades union. The American Association of Retired People has been working on specific health care issues affecting aging Americans. High on their legislative agenda is prescription drug coverage. Mr. John Rother is Director of Legislation and Public Policy for the AARP. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And Nick, how is the lack of insurance affecting the quality of life of people at the end of life?
I don't think it's a surprise that a healthcare system that doesn't take good care of the living doesn't take good care of the dying. People who don't have access to health care insurance and coverage don't get to die on their own terms. They die too early, and they die too sick, a painful and early death. They get worse illnesses. They get late-stage cancer that's treated later and much more painfully. They get longer hospital stays. They get a brutal death instead of a humane one, and it started because they didn't have access to health coverage when they needed it.
John, is the solution putting more money into the system, or is the solution, as was suggested in the program we saw today, spending the same amount of money in different things?
Well, we already spend a huge amount of money on health care in this country, much more than any other country in the world, yet we have all these gaps. So we clearly have to look and rearrange where that money is spent, taking it away probably from some of the more high-tech and putting it into more human services and things that really involve personal interactions. If we could do that, we may need some additional money, especially for that transition, but we can certainly spend the money we have much better, much more effectively, much more humanely than we currently do.
Nick, do you agree?
I do. I think that we waste a lot of money and that we find that health care becomes a market commodity, and it's a lousy market commodity. It's one thing not to be able to buy the latest computer. It's another thing not to be able to go to a doctor.
Yeah. John, what happens, specifically, what happens to the elderly who cannot afford their prescriptions?
Well, people make very tough trade-offs. Sometimes they do not fill a prescription and may find themselves in an emergency room, a hospital, nursing home, unnecessarily because of that. Other times they'll only take a partial dose or stop taking it too early, same result. And then for other people, they're making very tough trade-offs in terms of food, rent, the other necessities of life. So they're really giving up or putting themselves at risk in a very major way because of the expense and because they don't have coverage. So they're facing the highest cost of anyone in the country for prescription drugs.
Drugs for comfort care, aren't they covered by Medicare and Medicaid?
No, Medicare only covers drugs if you're in a hospital or if you're admitted to a hospice program. Otherwise, you're completely on your own for the cost of drugs, and you don't have anyone that can help you bargain with the drug companies the way that most of the rest of us do. So you're paying very high prices.
Nick, in the program we just saw, we saw a woman who had to give up her job and her own health care to take care of her mother. Is that typical?
I think it's pretty commonplace. There's a lot of discussion by the politicians about the estate tax. The average person doesn't wind up with an estate not because the government taxes it, but because you have to spend down to be eligible for home health care or to be eligible to wind up in a nursing home. People spend their money on health care unnecessarily, and you want to save money for the next generation. Get universal health coverage, including prescriptions, and you won't have to play all these games with the estate tax.
What do you say to those who say that the cost of universal health care is quality health care? That the quality suffers if it's suddenly spread out? I'd like to hear both of your answers to that.
My first answer is that we start out with a system that has great quality if you can afford it and gross inequality. What do I say to every African American and all the immigrants that their health isn't worth as much now? I believe we have the ability to have quality and equality, and today I'm being told by the market, pick. If you can buy it, you get quality. If not, you get inequality. That's my answer. We can afford both.
John?
I think that the first thing we have to do is get everybody covered. But then with coverage, we still need to improve the quality of care that's there. We need to improve people's understanding of healthcare, better healthcare practices. And there's some serious problems in the healthcare system, even for those with coverage, that have to be addressed as well. So it's a big agenda, but it's going to be impossible to really take that on until we get everybody covered first.
All right, so you agree on where we have to end up. How do we get there? Nick?
You can't get universal health care coverage through the market. You need the political will of the people in this country. Everybody's saying we want universal, high-quality, comprehensive health care. The only way to do that is to make sure that it is the policy of this country. You don't get universal education without it being the policy of this country. And in this country, policy means law. And so we need to make universal health care the law of the land and not see if we can buy our way into it. And that's what the U2K campaign is about, Universal Health Care 2000. I think people ought to join.
John, how do we get there?
Well, we get there through political leadership, and I think there's an important role at the grassroots, certainly, but we also need leaders who are going to put this on the agenda and reserve the funds necessary to help us get there. And right now, we've got leaders that are saying, well, we'll go partway there. And so if we can get that done and then go to the next step, maybe we can't do it at all at once, but we need to keep that momentum going, because right now it's going the other way. We're losing coverage and the problem's getting worse.
Certainly our elderly can't wait.
That's right.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Mary Alice and I will be back with a last word right after this. Thank you for watching 13. For more about On Our Own Terms and reaching out, call 212-560-2888 and ask for the discussion guide to Bill Moyers' series. We'll send you the booklet, and we'll also send you the outreach brochure for some of the resources in 13's communities.
If you have internet access, log on to 13's website for information about the people and groups that have helped us with our local outreach effort. That's 13.org. You can use 13's website to get to the website for On Our Own Terms, too. Thank you for staying with us. Goodbye.
On Our Own Terms, Reaching Out is made possible in part by Jasperon.com and by HeavenlyDoor.com.
People are surviving more diseases than ever before. Our life expectancy has gone up 20 years in 3 generations. Scientists can decode human DNA, but we still don't know how to talk about dying. Jasperon brings together families, caregivers, and professionals to educate and support each other in every aspect of advanced care planning. Jasperon, the Advanced Care Planning Support Network.
HeavenlyDoor.com assists baby boomers and aging adults with pre-need and time-of-need funeral planning. Floral packages, condolence cards, jewelry, and funeral purchases are one click away. HeavenlyDoor.com, merging technology with tradition. Additional support for On Our Own Terms Reaching Out is made possible by the Elroy and Terry Krumholz Foundation.
This Friday, Think 13. At 8, it's Washington Week in Review, followed at 8:30 by Wall Street Week with Louis Rukeyser. At 9, through political triumph and personal tragedy, no family has had a greater hold on the American imagination. Part 1 of the Kennedys on the American Experience. And at 11, it's Charlie Rose, of course. That's Friday, a great night to Think 13.
Are you going to miss out on our exciting Lucky 13 2000 sweepstakes? Not if you enter now. Your entry must be received by November 15th. Watch your mail for this envelope and your final chances to enter and win. And check out this added bonus. When you enter now, you'll be eligible to win one of our Fast 10 Movado watches. A timely reason to enter right away. There are over 100 exciting prizes you could win. Time is running out. Final deadline November 15th. So watch your mail and good luck. This fall, where will you go? What will you learn? Who can you be? Stay curious. Think 13 this fall. It was one of Hitler's greatest weapons. And he sent it to America's coast with devastating results.
We had a very easy game there.
50 years later, 2 divers discover a Nazi sub sunk off our New Jersey coast.
It shouldn't be there. According to the war records, there isn't supposed to be a U-boat for 100 miles in either direction.
This begins a 6-year odyssey to find out what was the sub's identity. How did it end up here? And who was the crew of this ill-fated voyage? Dive into a dangerous, incredible journey with Nova and solve the mystery of Hitler's lost sub. What is he doing?
Hi. You want to cut some?
How does it work?
I can really feel the beating.
Your host, Alan Alda, is back to find you the answers.
And was that me or was that the computer?
So sit back, relax, and get ready for another season of Scientific American Frontiers.
This is the essence of building